You are listening to episode 166 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, and today I have back on the show a regular guest, Mr. Atom Bergstrom. Out of all of the shows that I've recorded with Atom, I'm shocked that we've never had a full one completely on solar nutrition or chronobiotic nutrition. It's based on the organ clock system, that different parts of our body are active at specific times. And the basic idea behind eating on time is that you get more nutrition out of your food when you eat it on time. I've been playing around with this for the last 4 or 5 months, not 100% militant, but just entertaining the idea. And I really feel a difference. And I like that Atom is not all or nothing with it. He actually says that you want to break the rules intentionally, I think once a month. And so it's just one more thing to be aware of, not to stress out about or try to be 100%, but just to be aware that this is another tool that you can use to improve your health. So I'll let Atom break it down here. Enjoy the show. Here is Atom Bergstrom. All right, we're here with Atom Bergstrom. Welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be here. The wonders of the internet. You're in Idaho, and I'm here in California.
It's a pretty far distance. Yeah, we were laughing before the show that I think this is our 11th or so, and you've mentioned solar nutrition throughout our episodes, but we've never had a full one on it. Sunsync nutrition and eating on time. And for whatever reason, about a month and a half ago, I started binging your old interviews, I think it was 7-8 years ago, with Justin and Kate on Extreme Health Radio. I think those are the best ones I found. They're all on YouTube. And I was taking notes, what time to do different things. And I've been playing with it more, not being 100%, but instead of 50, maybe 80%, and just really feeling it. And something stuck out that you told Justin and Kate like 7 years ago. You said it increases the synchronicity in your life, because that's kind of related to timing. And that was my favorite part of maybe the 10 interviews that I binge listened to.
Synchronicity has been one of my favorite subjects for a long time. I noticed things happening like that when I was in high school. And then when I discovered the I Ching, I got into the idea of timing. There's 2 types of timing: chronological that goes on, and then there's a type that things just kind of match up. Carl Jung got into it a lot. You know, one of his patients would have a dream about a scarab beetle, and then the scarab beetle would come against the window. And I have that all the time. Recently, in fact, I was talking about, what is his name? There's a Russian bodybuilder who has novel ideas about bodybuilding, Pavel Satselin, something like that. And so I was going through some of my cases of notes, and I found almost identical information just randomly in one of my Kinko boxes full of notes from a 1980s strength and health interview. So it definitely, I've always had a lot of synchronicity, but it definitely kind of torqued it.
Yeah, I've noticed there's times in my life where, there might be a little delay, where the synchronicity was more, and then times when the synchronicity was less. Like I remember synchronicities happening daily, and then there were periods where it didn't happen for months or maybe years. Really interesting.
I used to be fascinated with it, where it happened to me so often that I started doing experiments. And I noticed if I meditated when I first started meditating, it would happen at the beginning. And then if I'd stopped meditating after a month, it would happen. And I equate it to, you know how we notice the sunrise and sunset more often? and that it seems more dramatic. We're more likely to remember the sun coming up and the sun going down than we are the sun anyplace else in the sky. So I started changing consciousness, and in the in-between zone, sunrise and sunset, if you will, I would get these synchronicities. So one time I hadn't touched alcohol for a couple of months, and I took a glass of wine and just walked out the door to see what would happen. And my high school buddies driving up and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Waiting for you." I hopped in the car and off we went. So that kind of thing would fascinate me. And it happened more when I started getting into eating on time.
That's really cool. Yeah, I got started with it, I think a month and a half ago, just really diving into your information. And I got the book, Yes, No, Maybe, Chronobiotic Nutrition finally. And, coming from the Ray Peat world, which you do as well, they're very anti nuts and seeds. And I was for the last couple of years. And then because of your information, and particularly what you said about almonds, how they're more omega-6 than omega-3. And this is a topic of debate. I still get challenged every day about it. They're like, all PUFAs are bad, whether it's HUFAs or omega-6s. But only one causes lipofuscin, right? And that's the omega-3s.
When I researched that, that's what I found. In 14 books and a lot more of answering questions about it and researching it since, and tempted to write that 15th one, but resisting, I can't find a single case of omega-6s causing yellow fat disease. It probably causes other things. But Monsanto and DuPont know this. They take the omega-3s out of their soybeans now because they know that the omega-3 jams up fast food machinery and also ages salmons prematurely before they can kill them. You'd get bad meat if they didn't give them, if they didn't take the linoleic acid out. The corn oil was okay, or the corn feed, but the soy that they were feeding salmon, because it's more omega-3s, was not cutting it. So they're making a fortune now, probably going to be trillions on these soybeans, that they have completely eliminated the omega-3s without telling the public. They call it high olea soybeans. But if you check, there's 3 patents. Take out the linoleic and linolenic and call it linolenic so people don't get wise that that's omega-3s, and then adds a little bit of olea. Brag about we took the saturated fat out of it, 1%, like that makes a difference. So it's a scam. And at the same time, they recommend omega-3s. And meanwhile, they've been fighting. Actually, Monsanto has been fighting omega-3s since the 1970s. So wow. It's amazing how they can get away with it and make a fortune playing both sides of the fence.
There's so many traps to get through, right?
Too.
Like cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated fat causes heart disease, low fat, no salt. And then people, if they survive those traps, then they're on to the omega-3 trap, which unless they find you, they'll probably never get out of it.
And you too. There are people catching on now. I see more and more, but they actually rig it up on Google. When I first started dissing omega-3 fatty acids and put yellow fat disease in, there were about 8,500 hits. Is that what you call it on when you search on the internet? If you put quotation marks in yellow fat disease. And when I started, they kept climbing. I got it up to 26,000, and I realized my blogs were affecting the search, and people were starting to get it. Suddenly, one day, after about 4 months, it dropped down to 8,000 again, and has stayed ever since. And I'm all over the internet with yellow fat disease. Ray Peat is, you are, other people are, and yet they don't want people to find out. There's no mention of yellow fat disease being associated with omega-3 fatty acids in Wikipedia. They have 8 reasons, all of them having nothing to do with that. And so it's rigged. The game is rigged. Sounds like a conspiracy.
Well, well, I started eating nuts in the morning because of you. And what made sense to me was moderation, right? I mean, there's a time to be extreme and take tons of stuff. I think there's time for both, but most of the time to me, it makes sense to be in balance and instead of being a raw vegan like I used to do and go through, 5 pounds of almonds a month or whatever, just having a handful in the morning, like I've been doing like 15 and then 15 soaked almonds, 1 walnut and 1 cashew. And those are all the nuts I've been having in the morning. I think I'm slowly starting to add in Brazil nuts, but I really feel the difference doing that.
We used to use Brazil nuts, but we've had trouble up here finding ones that don't have mold in them. And I used to eat them regularly. 1 Brazil nut, because they're very strong. Even Bernard Jensen back in the day used to recommend 1 Brazil nut. And but then no matter where we got them, you could taste they definitely had mold in. So I don't know what's going on with the shipping, because I never had that problem with Brazil nuts in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and somewhere around 2012 or 2013, they started, actually later, 2015, they started coming in bad. But I haven't checked recently for a couple of years now. So,
yeah, I found some companies that it's really convenient. You can buy them in bags already soaked and dehydrated, which I might get back into soaking my own almonds because I kind of like taking the skin off and eating it. Do you have thoughts on that? Eating it skin on or off with a soaked almond?
Yeah, actually the skin is good because it has tannins. Now, tannins used to be the bad guy, but in tea they call them, what is their name for them? God, I can't think. Phenolics. And phenolics are good for you. So again, they use that trick of linolenic bad, omega-3 good, and they'd use tannins before. Put a little milk in your tea to protect you from the tannins. Now all those phenolics in there are excellent, e.g., whatever those initials are, and this and that, they got them all in. It's all tannins. So the tannins actually help you absorb any vitamin C foods you're having in the morning, and also help you absorb the almond itself.
Wow, interesting.
But there's a lot of people really skitsy about eating the.
Sorry. I think we have like a 3-second delay. It might be the snow that's coming down here in Idaho.
Yeah, we've been complaining about a cold California here, but we had nothing like you guys, both in Colorado and where you are now.
Yeah, I love it. It's really refreshing, and it's been between like in the 30s most of the time, sometimes the 40s, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, once you get used to it, I used to do workshops up in Wisconsin, where Guru is now. But it got to be 27 below zero, but we were inside with a fireplace and all that, and could go out, have snowball fights and things like that.
That's awesome.
And
so
I
it's
think
interesting.
Idaho
So the
has
tannins
more of
help absorb
a drier cold. I like the drier cold.
Yeah, I think the humidity has been around like 50%, which I like. I can't take anything too low.
50% is actually ideal for not getting colds and not getting viruses. This was actually proved by Johns Hopkins in the 20s and 30s and totally forgotten. In fact, during the Spanish flu, one hospital only had a few deaths because they knew that particular principle back then. So if you have a dehumidifier or humidifier, like if you live in Arizona where it's so dry, it gets to be 5% humidity, or if you're in Houston where it gets to be 100% humidity on an ongoing basis, you can have one of those to adjust it to 50 during cold and flu and other seasons. I don't want to mention any other names, get us in trouble here on Facebook.
That's awesome to know. So oranges, you got me on back on orange juice because I was buying store bought the last few years, and I was fresh squeezing for a while, and then somehow I got off that and was buying it, in a plastic jug, but totally different. Just the way you feel, the taste, everything. And so I've been ordering like 2 boxes of organic oranges, and it doesn't take me long every morning to just juice 32 ounces. And you were saying that's good for the lungs, right? At lung time?
It's definitely good for the lungs. Yeah, without a doubt. Something in it, and I don't even know if it's the bioflavonoids or what they claim, but there's something in it that, well, I had kind of a magic cure over taking oranges and giving up tuna and mayonnaise, because I was going down the toilet here in about 2014, I guess it was. I had edema. I had petechia, the little purple spots that appear out of nowhere. I had bleeding gums, a bleeding butt, only when I wiped. I had to go, with your pants down, make it to the sink, wipe with water so you didn't irritate it. Now I can wipe my butt with sandpaper. Oh, and then I had headacheless migraines. They call them coke lights, but I don't do coke. So suddenly I'd have this zigzag pattern appear in front of my eyes, have to wait 20 minutes so I could see the computer again, and it would be happening regularly. Now that's gone too. Anyway, even with solar, which saved me back in the day a long time ago, by eating all that tuna, which, by the way, my mentor, Donald Lay, warned me against. He didn't mention yellow fat disease. He just thought I was doing too much of it. And he said, make your own mayonnaise. Don't eat that stuff. And of course, I was partly eating, what was it, flax? They had some kind of healthy mayonnaise. And at that time, I knew nothing about omega-3s being bad. When they came out of supplements, though, I knew I wasn't going to take them because it made no sense to me. And especially when the Eskimos only live into their 30s and 40s, I figured, of course, they're not going to have heart disease. They do better on junk food today.
So solar nutrition, that's based on the Chinese organ clock, which is a proven thing, right? That our organs and glands and parts of the body are active at certain times of the day. That's like the foundation of solar nutrition.
Definitely. In fact, in China, they've had that chart since at least maybe 600 AD or so. Probably goes back even further. And they've known that the organs tend to cycle through. Now, modern science didn't discover that, but they did discover that all of our cortisol, calcium, all of these have rhythms in our body where they're maximum and minimum. And even as much as maybe 30 years ago, maybe 40 or 50, they knew that if you take a nap during the day, you don't have your calcium saving mechanism. You will pee out 16 times more calcium than if you take that nap at night at the same, 12 hours distance. But you pee out more sodium too. So people who are worried about high sodium, I'm not, but they can just take a nap at that time. So apparently over millions and millions and millions of sunrises and sunsets, we've adapted to these sunrises and sunsets. And we've got a calcium conservation mechanism that occurs in the dark. So there it is. And it's independent of light. It's becoming trained in our body. But light can calibrate it. It's called they have a fancy German name. I forget the name now. But basically here's the principle. If you take 20 grandfather clocks, and this was done in about the 1600s by a clockmaker, and you put them on the wall, within 12 hours, they're all synchronized. They're all synchronized to the biggest clock. And of course, the biggest clock in our cosmos is the sun up there. And so it tends to be the pacemaker for everything that goes on planet Earth, whether we like it or not.
You reminded me last year I went and I saw I bought an old clock at an antique store, one with the swing pendulum, because I thought it was cool, and it stopped one day, and so I found on Facebook or something a clock repair guy, and he invited me out to his home, and I went out to his shop, and he just seemed like a clock wizard. There were clocks all over this room, and he like fixed it right in front of me, and it looked like a million parts in there, and he just was going a mile a minute doing things and tuning it. I was really fascinated.
It is amazing. Back in the day when I was a kid, a lot of people had grandfather clocks. I'd had some relatives that had one in every room. So at nighttime, you go to sleep with all this ding, ding, click, 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 and then doing, doing, doing every hour. They'd all go off. Never had any problem sleeping, but perhaps that's because I was in New Jersey and New York, where people beat their horn at 3 a.m.
That's funny. I've heard some weird stories about. Someone told me, like, I think their grandfather or something, their older relative gifted them a grandfather clock, and then when they found out that they died, it stopped that same exact time, like same hour that they died. The pendulum stopped swinging just out of nowhere.
There's even a song about that by Johnny Cash, My Grandfather's Clock. Yeah, you can find it on the internet.
Wow.
We have a resonance between machinery and if you have a car or something else, it'll often act as a shunt for our bodies. It's a strange phenomenon. It sounds woo-woo, but it's very real. So a lot of times when I break something, I said, great, it keeps me from getting a broken bone. Now here's a synchronous experience. When I was with my mentor, Adon Lay, who was a very unusual guy, one time in a restaurant, I asked, what makes an object break to protect you? What's that all about? And at the same time, the waitress brought us 2 glasses of ice water. And in front of me, my glass went crack, got a big crack right down the glass. I said, I guess I just saved myself a broken bone or something. So it's a very real phenomenon. I've seen it. And if you break something, you may mourn over that object, but it might be protecting you from a broken bone. Energy works in very strange ways, Rupert Sheldrake type of ways, and it's very real.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. So tree bush root is the basic idea behind sun-sync nutrition, right? And there's specific time to have meats. And you were telling me before the show that eggs are actually neutral, right? You can have those technically anytime.
They do their most therapeutic qualities for your body. Circulation sex meridian is 7 to 9 at night. And obviously, if you take a fish with an egg, and there are fish that are low in DHA, you take it at that time. But because it's a young food, and like a human baby doesn't get on sun clock until they're maybe 2 or 3 years old. Actually, they're not completely on sun clock till 6. And it's been proven if you're an iridologist or an iris analysis, and a professional one like they do in Germany, Joseph Deck's work, you don't see the markings, the genetic or hereditary markings appear in the eye, in the iris at 6. Before that, you look at an eye, it's quite different. Now, the people who say that iridology is not real, and there is a pop iridology that's made up, but how do you explain that the eye dramatically changes from a child over that first 10 years of life, and then you start to see alien pigments invade, and certain markings happen with blood vessels that occur that are reflexes to what's in our body. And by the way, talking about tree bush root, the eyeball is an example. You'll notice all the brain reflexes are on the top of the eye, the genital reflexes on the bottom of the eye, and the heart is in the center. And in the way growth works on this earth, trees seek the sun. They seek the sky. if you plant a seed, it will rotate so that always the plant goes up straight. It doesn't go at a 45-degree angle unless it's damaged or the slippage in the soil. It goes straight up. Meanwhile, the root is conditioned to be geotropic. It heads down for the earth. Also, it'll head for the water. So sometimes it will go slightly off to the side with water. And then in the middle is the vine. And the vine goes in a circle. You'll find that same pattern in iridology and anywhere, because our original shape is a worm. And then all the reflexes come out of it. If you look at an iris, it's a cross cut like a salami of a worm. And then our large intestine is a caterpillar. The other is a worm. And everything we do, all our art and literature, is just a spin-off from looking for food so that we can turn into a butterfly. And you'll see the butterfly bones in the skull and in the thyroid and the upper parts of the body. It's really an interesting body geometry.
Wow. I remember dissecting earthworms and being just really tripped out about it. Maybe that's why I knew I was like looking at a fractal.
Yep. And they're nighttime food, by the way. You see, the trees have to eat, and they get the first sun that comes over the horizon, goes to the tree. It doesn't go down to the grains and the grasses. In fact, Father Kniep in Germany had the water walking technique where you go out barefoot on the grass. And anyone who's done that finds out, wow, that grass is really cold in the morning. No sun is shining down there. It's up in the trees. Now at midday, the breeze is blowing through the trees. The sun's directly shining through onto the grass and grain. That's their time. And then at nighttime, you got the leftover infrared radiation, which can penetrate about 2 or 3 feet into the ground. And then you get 5 feet into the ground, maybe 6 feet. And then you get the infrared energy to store minerals and nutrients in the earth. So basically, it's set up like that. If you notice the geometry, that a tree tends to seek the morning, and a very tall tree will stop photosynthesizing at high noon. So in solar nutrition, you basically can eat any of the tree foods from 12:30 in the morning till noon. That's a big space, the largest space. Our brain, when we're born, is bigger than the rest of our body. Then we kind of fill in the body to carry the brain around wherever it wants to go. And then the midday is from 11:30 to 7 o'clock. And that's when you eat all of your muscle food, mainly. You'll see most of your muscle food is at that time. And then at nighttime, you get your genital food, your liver food, your food like that, which grows underground and gets the residue of what's left after the light day is over. And when you really look at it, it's common sense as well as chronobiology and circadian rhythms.
Yeah, I really feel it. And do you absorb more of the nutrients when you eat specific foods on time, right? They're unlocked easier?
Yeah, the Japanese actually found a very strange phenomenon that if you cut a food or pick it one growth period before the time you eat it, the minerals are trapped in the food and not out of the food, because they tend to be being used when you eat it on time. So if I'm going to eat a midday food like a tomato, I would pick it at noon, and then I would eat it at nighttime. Excuse me, I would pick it, if I was going to eat a midtime food, I would pick it in the morning and then eat it at midday. If I was going to do a beet, I'd pick it at midday and eat it at night. If I was going to pick an apple, I'd pick it late at night and then eat it in the morning. Ideally, it's impractical to follow all of these kind of rules. But if a person is sick, it's more important for them to follow those rules and be more exact about it. I'm probably about 90% solar. Every once in a while, put a little of this in or a little of that. And of course, with solar, you get a whole week of lunar time, so you can let the steam off the tea kettle and kind of do what you want, especially if you need it. to otherwise you become the boy in the bubble. You need the immunity factor. Now, at so-called lunar time for an entire week during the time of the full moon, when the actual pressure of the moon allows things to go through your body more readily, we don't usually do that. We just get a little looser in our diet. And if you read the book, there's a whole push-through section 3 days before, and then there's a full moon and 3 days after. You'll find that exact phraseology in the ancient Chinese book, the I Ching, by the way, the so-called lizard book, where it goes into that very meaning. But nobody really seems to know what it means, but that's one of its meanings.
Wow. Yeah, that was one of the fascinating parts on the Extreme Health Radio interviews, that you can break the rules. I loved that. And I didn't catch that it was during the full moon. I think we're approaching one in the next few days, right?
Yeah, I think we're at full moon now. I haven't really kept track. It's awfully bright out there when I go out to my car at night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's cool.
the full moon time
so for a whole week.
Pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can do it. It's basically a whole week. So as Donald Lay explained, you get 28 days of what he called the spermal connection, and 7 days of the ovum. We're made out of a sperm and an ovum. If you look at the geometry, the head is round, just like an ovum, and the medulla oblongata is exactly where the sperm clipped in and made the woman pregnant and have a baby. The tail drops off. It regrows from the energy that the sperm delivered. And now, if you look at Kundalini, it's just the wagging of the sperm's tail. So it gets humorous when you look at the geometry. We're a big ovum. The brain is actually an ovum, and the rest of the body is a sperm with ambulators, 2 arms and 2 legs instead of a tail. But we still have a tail at the tailbone, the coccyx.
Yeah, it's funny. The other day, someone on one of my posts was asking about, I think, how to help sperm health. And I said, don't do NoFap, and that always causes a stir. And I pointed them to your sex newsletter. When people ask me about sperm or prostate health, I'm like, don't fall for the Montauk Chia fads, right?
It causes people problems, and a lot of Taoists didn't say that. There's 2 types of Jing. One is a muscle strength, and one is that in yoga they have a name for it too. Right? And there's really a male-oriented thing there. Like only men can do this, and women can't do that. They can now. Some Taoists actually say the woman has to stop that too. But it's well known that some women can have multiple orgasms where it's much more difficult for a guy, unless, as Timothy Leary claimed, under LSD, a man could have several dozens of orgasms. But I'll tell you, in my LSD days, that never worked for me.
That's funny.
I think it was because I was too busy seeing my partner turn into a telephone booth or a railroad line or something. Pretty hard to get turned on with that happening.
I wanted to circle back to oranges and citrus, Adam, because a controversial thing I didn't even know was going to be controversial when I started telling people what you said about eating citrus alone, kind of like melons, right? Like they say, I felt the difference because for the last year or two, maybe I've been doing orange juice with food at the same exact time, have a cup of orange juice, and my digestion seemed like it wasn't strong. Like it was just, I needed support or apple cider vinegar or something. And ever since seeing you talk about how, have citrus alone by itself on an empty stomach, so much better. Like I don't get bloated now if I have my orange juice like before I eat.
Yeah, it works like that. And by the way, Susie, Vibrant Gal here, one of her main interests in this type of eating is no matter what she did, and she has eaten extra healthy. I mean, she's amazing at the farmer's market. Knows just how to people see that she knows what they're doing, ask her questions about it. So she's been into health for a long time, but she kept getting bloated. When she switched the timing, no more bloat, went away. And that impresses a lot of people because bloat, often the so-called beer belly, is nothing but bloat. Solid fat is not as solid as people think. The great experiment where a guy, Van Helmont, he took a tree and he planted a seed for a willow tree. Well, it weighed 154 pounds after so many years, but only a few grams of soil was gone. Where did it come from? He assumed it all came from the water, but actually it came mostly from carbon dioxide, which a tree, as hard as it is nothing but carbon dioxide and water. If it was the trace elements that were making it physical and hard like that, then it would dig a hole in the forest. Every forest would, as it ate the soil, you'd go down. You'd have to climb down to go to every forest in the world. And of course, that doesn't happen. So say a fat person loses weight. What's happening? 84% is breathed out as carbon dioxide, and 16% is lost in water. Some of it in your breath, and some of it in your pee and your feces. That's all it was, and all the time. And people make a big complicated thing about it, but many people who eat on time find that they can actually triple their calories and lose weight. And that's one thing the Ray Peat group doesn't seem to gather, because they're counting calories. Like, why would they drink cream over low-fat milk and gain weight? I used to try to gain weight by drinking 2 quarts of half and half a day. Never put a pound on me. In fact, you can actually lose. If you think of the common sense of calories, who would think they could gain weight by calories if they said, well, look at all the calories in an olive oil bottle. I'll drink 2 quarts of olive oil a day and I'll gain all this weight. Yeah, right. You'll be on the toilet all day is what you'll be. Those calories get sabotaged in many ways. If we were a steam engine, calories would work. But the human body is not a steam engine, so you can actually triple your calories and lose weight because it's a measurement of burning. All you have to do is burn a little hotter, which is one of the purposes of Ray Peat's diet, right? To get you to metabolize faster and have less lactic acid. Well, earlier in one of his early shows, he went from Russia to where they were fat, and then he drank all that dairy in, Denmark, I think, and they weren't. So there's some contradiction in some of the things, and I'd like to hear his side of it, of course, before I go misunderstanding what he's saying.
Wow. Yeah, you made me think of a few things. So I came down with, I think I got shedded on with the C thing because I don't know. It wasn't like any flu I ever had. And I was out for 3 days, no big deal. I was just really fatigued, felt like I had a full body muscle soreness feeling. And what's interesting is I was like belching a lot, like I had a lot of gas. And that whole time I was like thinking of Adam. I was like, wow, this is like, I have like excess like gas in my body, like this pressure. And it's interesting. Like I think orange juice helped me like get some of that gas out. That was my intuition after I drank a ton of orange juice. So yeah, there's definitely a connection with the gas pressure.
It will. An orange and lemons and the citrus family are very acidic, but a lot of people don't realize that when it goes in your body, it leaves an alkali ash, and of course, it's very alkaline. But most fruits do that in your intestines. Orange has such volatile acids, it starts doing it in the stomach. Now, common sense, stomach acid dissolves or is the first preparation in dissolving protein. So you're going to mess up your protein. You could probably get away with eating some sugar, maybe fat. But if you're eating any protein in your food, then it's going to sabotage it. And it's well known that proteins fragments that get into the small intestine. I think they're called tannins. It's been a long time since I've thought about this. And they get into the bloodstream. They can't be processed by the pancreas and the spleen. And so they come back and irritate and block the blocking in a vicious circle. So that's one of the problems with oranges. Now, a lot of people, I drink milk and orange all the time, never had a problem, and good. But you'll find that you do a lot better and don't have that bloat, and you're more apt to go to the bathroom 3 times a day. A person that eats solar over a period of time will find they're going to the bathroom more. I can actually go in now. I'm conditioned. I can touch an orange and run to the bathroom. Viagra gal will be my witness. I just have to touch it. And if she's in the bathroom, I say, I can't eat my orange yet, because as soon as I even look at it or smell it, I'll be running into the bathroom. And since we have one bathroom in this place, we want to make sure that we have separate bathroom visits.
That's funny. Oh, I want to get back to to solar nutrition. Yeah. We're both mount the horse and ride off in all directions kind of people. But I have one question for you. So on the topic of weight loss, yesterday I wrote a little post on my sauna for weight loss, because I've been getting into the wood burning barrel sauna I have. I'm like, I have this thing sitting here. I'm not using it enough. So I've started to sweat in it for like an hour a day, which is really nice in the snow. Feels really, really good. But do you think saunas actually work for weight loss? Is it because of that carbon dioxide component?
Yeah, I think they're beneficial if you don't overdo it in them. And a lot of times, if you expose yourself to some cold to close the pores afterwards. In other words, you could just run out the door, stay out there for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever. You don't have to do a Wim Hof type of thing, because long time, when you get cold, that's called that bone chill cold. That's not beneficial for you. But if you get that cold, like I can take a cold shower at the end of my shower and then be overheated for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. In fact, I used that principle in the 80s when I was up in Flagstaff. I took an ice cold shower after the hot shower. Then I got my Speedo bathing suit and lay out in the middle of a snowstorm. People were coming for this workshop, and here's a guy sunbathing in a Speedo in the middle of a blizzard. And I was fine with it because my body was energized. I would also punch a punching bag to warm me up, because I found out by moving the organs like that, it heats you up quite well. So for about 3 months, I walked around with nothing but those tank tops on in the winter, both in Houston and in New Mexico, California. Never had a problem with it. But it gets tricky. In the Himalayas, they call that mastering tumo. Pretty much what Wim Hof has done. But you have to be careful. A lot of people, Jack LaLanne, when he would go into his ice baths to prepare for those swims, towing tugboats in his teeth and all that, his wife was worried because he almost died several times in that ice water. So a lot of people can go into shock. Ray Peat calls it correctly thermal shock, because there is no cold. It's degrees of heat. Whether you're at 0 degrees centigrade or positive, it's still thermal shock when you get too much of either one. Long story short,
wow.
Saunas are good. If you close your pores a minute or two afterwards. And if you don't stay in too long, like even in a hot tub, I have a friend that his girlfriend died in a hot tub. Yeah, hypothermia. Wow. He went in to get him some drinks. Wow. She was dead when he got out to the hot tub again. You think that's not a trauma. Yeah.
Wow. Do you think drinking certain things in the hot tub, or like smoking a cigar and having like bourbon or something, would help protect?
Good question. Yeah, you don't want to get overheated, and if you're in the sauna, if you pass out, you just wake up usually, unless you're in Sedona. And you remember that incident that occurred there where 3 people died from the sweat lodge, the huge sweat lodge they had there. So heat's a tricky thing. People do die from it, and you have to just be careful. So you monitor yourself so you don't get overheated. There's no problem, and it is therapeutic to sweat. Obviously, sweating is good for us.
Yeah. So one of my friends sent me this lady's, because there's always people on social media contradicting and saying this is wrong, this is right, whatever. And she was saying we don't sweat out heavy metals. And I thought it was fascinating, kind of sent me on a rabbit hole to try to find proof that if we do sweat heavy metals out of our skin. But she was saying we absolutely don't. She's like, I have a degree in this. You can't sweat heavy metals out of your body. It's interesting.
Some come out, but a lot come out in the bile. Some of the fat brings them into the bile, takes them out. Some come out in the urine, but we do get some of them out in the sweat. But it's not as complete a process as people think. But we do. It is good for you too, because even if they don't come out in the sweat, it tends to activate the organs to make it happen elsewhere. See, our adrenal glands, particularly our adrenal medulla, are located in the skin. So they don't tell you that. And the only place I've ever found that is in General Electric research in the 1920s. They had worked it out to perfection. They knew exactly which cells worked. It was the hypodermal level, and they had discovered a fourth nervous system: sympathetic, parasympathetic, enteric, which is the gut system, and then the hypodermal system, which they discovered. It got lost, medical amnesia, was briefly rediscovered in 1951, but nobody knew what to do with it, and they just partially rediscovered it, so they dropped it again. So you will be told by your doctor that your adrenal medulla is in the middle. It's only located right here. Actually, there's tissue throughout the omentum and even into the lungs, but every cell in your hypodermal area that contains phenylalanine or tyrosine is an adrenal cell from the adrenal medulla and can process adrenaline. Another reason why midday is a good time to be out, whether you're in Idaho or California, you can absorb nutrients from the sun. When people say, oh, I can't get vitamin D and I can't get this in my level, I tell them, there's no solar power in your area? Where do you think the solar power comes from? Where our friend Guru Ganjasenti is in Wisconsin, it's a big state for solar power. When I used to teach classes up there, I was amazed. You got solar power up here? Yeah. They wanted to put in a nuclear plant and they voted it out. We said, we don't care. And so now the power companies sell the units for people's individual homes. I stayed in a lot of solar homes when I was out there, and we're talking 27 degrees below zero during some of those winters and a lot of cloudy days. How are they operating solar? Because you can get sunshine. How does a polar bear get vitamin D? Think about it. Oh, well, they eat a seal that has it. How did the seal get it? Oh, they ate a fish. How did the fish get it? Oh, they ate a krill. How did the krill get it? They ate phytoplankton. Well, Wikipedia says that phytoplankton only gets its vitamin D from the sun. How does it do that up there in the north in the Arctic Circle or the Antarctic Circle? How does it do that? Nobody asked those questions.
Wow, that's a really interesting point. I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, I have 2 solar panel arrays on pole mounts out here. And during a full moon, I'll actually charge up my batteries. I mean, it's not as much as a summer's day, but I do all night get a charge if there's a full moon hitting the panels.
You can get some, yeah. In fact, they have some specifically tuned in for full moon and even other phases of the moon. Yeah, that's great that you get that.
So with solar nutrition, as I said at the start, like my favorite thing about your website, SunSync Nutrition, I'm just obsessed with the very bottom of each page, because you have basically 3 pages with the food list. You have growth zone 1, 2, and 3. And it makes it really easy because Adam lists out all the different foods to eat at the different times, but at the bottom of each page, there's these elixirs. And maybe it's my former liquidarian self that's really enamored with this, but the morning one, I think in a lot of our shows, you mentioned the Cobalamin tonic, but people might have never heard of there's one for high blood sugar, which is salt in your coffee, and then low blood sugar is sugar in the coffee, right?
Yep. That was originally how I was taught by Adonalay how to handle that. Then he came up with Cobalamin tonic, and it has a lot of advantages. We've been doing it for a long time. I think I started. I actually didn't drink coffee until 1985, when he started recommending the coffee once a week on Mondays and Fridays. We asked him why Mondays and Thursdays, excuse me. On Mondays, because 10 times more heart attacks happen to people on Monday than any other day of the week, because you have the shift from being off on a Sunday and then, I got to go back to work to accelerate again. Momentum is a constant level, but acceleration, when you go, that's why it's hard to either wake up or hard to go to sleep. Once you get in that momentum, there's no problem with traveling. But anyway, the waking up like that helps with Cobalamin tonic in the morning, because your brain is the upper part of your body that resonates with the trees. Look at the geometry. From the rib cage on up, you have basically brain and lung oriented time. In the midday, it's all gut, it's digestion. And at nighttime, it's all genitals and roots. What are all the Chinese aphrodisiacs? Roots. They call them roots. It's slang for certain organs that we have. You'll find a lot of slang like that. And all of their aphrodisiacs, whether it be ginseng or all of the roots tend to be maca, all tend to be sexual. And that's the second time of day. In yoga, they say, don't eat onions and garlic because it stirs up your sexuality. Well, you want to do that at night. The brain's for meditating in the morning, and then party time is at night. Now, you ever see the terminology ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph? It's based on the levels of our cells downward, but it's always upward. The ectomorph is often called the thyroid type, and they're activated in the morning. If you want to be a brain, you eat your morning foods. If you want to be a muscle man, you eat your midday foods. And if you want to be a fat man, eat your nighttime foods. Like you want to bulk up. Let's put it more politely.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's funny, Adam, you bring up ginseng, because on each page, I've noticed you have like a wild card where I open up one of the drinks and I'm like, whoa, this is a weird one every page. And one of them for the morning tonic is ginseng soaked in water, but not eaten. And lepidolite, is that a crystal soaked in the water?
It's actually a stone. I don't have any anymore, but I used to use it all the time. When I would travel with the Dono, at usually before dawn, we would drink out of this bottle that he just kept pouring water in it, and the ginseng and the lepidolite would soak in there. Basically, it's a lithium element. Lithium in large amounts is toxic, but in almost homeopathic amounts is very beneficial. The largest lithium study ever done was in Texas. Wherever there was lithium water, like the Rio Grande is famous for having extra lithium water, the suicides were down, the heroin addiction was down, alcoholism was down, murders were down, all kinds of addictions were down. Huge study done. And so it just takes a small amount of lithium, not the amounts that give you this balloon face after years where you get really sick from lithium poisoning, particularly if you avoid salt. You're much more apt to get it. But anyway, small amounts of lithium, really beneficial for you.
Wow. So before we move on from breakfast, I know that what do you eat? I get that all day long. I'm sure you get that quite a bit because people are like, all this information, and what are you eating? I just need to know, and you'll post sometimes pictures of your breakfast. I noticed, and it's basically like nuts and avocado and some fruit is what you guys generally eat, right?
We eat a lot less because we're pretty much mouse power mousers now. We just sit in front of our computers and don't get much exercise. So you could eat more. So we eat like a small breakfast. I will have personally 15 soaked almonds, one cashew, 3 pistachios, a walnut or half a walnut sometimes. And when other nuts are in season or don't have mold, we'll eat like pine nuts and Brazil nuts and pecans. One, usually we keep it low. Then I have half an avocado every day. It's not an approved repeat fruit, but it's rich in monounsaturated fatty acids and has less of the other polyunsaturated fatty acids than olive oil does. So I find nothing wrong with eating half an avocado, which I've been doing for years whenever I live in California, not in Texas. Here, they're all over the place. Then today we had sapote. That is an approved repeat food, and we get them from a grower here in Carpinteria, Ojai, that grows sapote. It's a delicious fruit. In season, we get chirimoyas and those things. So let's see. Then I just had that, and this time I just had coffee and sugar this morning because we didn't have maple syrup and cacao in the house. What else did I think that was about it that I can think about. Yeah, that was it. Oh, and 3 olives, 4 olives.
Wow. Well, I wish I could share some of my coffee with you. I have a lot here. Yesterday, I roasted a lot of beans since we had sun.
All right. Yeah, Vibrant Gal roasts our stuff in a popcorn popper, and we buy it in big bags on the internet, and then she makes it for us with distilled water and everything.
That's really cool. Yeah, I might be overkill because I have one that it's a machine that hooks up to an app, and then it, will slowly raise in temperature and then keep it there for a certain point. So it's like very mathematically precise.
Cool. Ray Pete is somewhat of a coffee aficionado. I think he said when he makes it, he doesn't put the boiling coffee in at first because it gets the flavor out, and then you put the hot boiling water in after to finish the rest of the grounds. We don't really mess with that. We just throw it in and are okay. Yeah, he's quite an aficionado, and there's a whole science to coffee, like the BS about it being acidic. That is a terminology, a coffee jargon word for having bite or tartness or pop, they call it. In other words, it has flavor to it. Has nothing to do with acid alkalinity. And ironically, caffeine is an alkaloid, but caffeic acid is in it for acidity. However, there's more in an apple than there is in coffee. Coffee, though, is one of the weirdest foods. It leaves no trace of acid alkalinity when it leaves you, except maybe in the bladder. It's a totally neutral food. Most foods don't do that. They leave a slight acid residue or a slight alkaline residue, not in the blood, but in the tissue, which is something scientists don't measure. They get hung up on the blood. The blood is too highly buffered. Obviously, you're not going to get much of a change there without dying from one end or the other. But the cells, it's like agriculture. What farmer would go plant something who's going to make a living out of it and not detect how acidic or alkaline the soil was? He doesn't test the water in the soil. He tests the soil. And doctors want to test your urine, which is a liquid, your saliva, which is a liquid. What about the meat? What about the fat? What about the protein? They missed the whole point of that.
Yeah, my friend told me that when she drinks coffee right before bed, she sleeps better. and she stopped doing that for whatever reason. So she's going to start again. And that's so contrary to what you hear, because you say, oh, caffeine's going to keep you up. But a lot of people could drink it and go right to sleep and actually sleep really well, right?
The only way I can stay awake if I drank maybe 4 cups of coffee or something like that. But I always do that. In fact, coffee is one of the things I kind of break the rule and have it all day. Technically, in solar, you want to have a tree coffee in the morning, a bush coffee in midday. And the only real bush coffee is in Yemen. It's a Yemenese coffee. They call it, I forgot the name of it, but under its false name, it's sold in other places under this other name, and it's not really real. Yemenese coffee is hard to get, and it's a stunted desert bush because it's hot in Yemen. And so that's midday. Then at nighttime, you have your coffee with a little salt, and you have, what is that thing they use in New Orleans and Seaport coffee and those other coffees? Chicory. You have chicory with it, and then you can drink it 3 times a day for energy. So coffee is kind of an exception to the rule, and I take the bulk of it in the morning. But if I need a little jolt to get through the afternoon, or have to write a blog or a book or something like that, then I jack myself up with a little coffee.
That's great. And so midday, we're on to bush foods, right?
Bush and vine and grass. The whole grass and flower thing happened after the forest canopy, where you got all the African bells and the plains where the buffalo roam, and they're midday foods because they eat that type of food. The grass family is really interesting. It includes wheat and rye and all of those, not to mention your other type of barley, greens, and all that, wheatgrass, all those kind of things. And then all your vegetables that are about that area, like tomatoes and broccoli and whatever, watercress, not watercress, rocket and arugula, all of those at that time of day. They're all the grass and the lettuce type family. And tomatoes were at one time the most, they insisted on being small intestine time from 1 to 3. They would stop producing at that time. But they have been aware of circadian rhythm since the 30s. Most of the tomatoes you get now are slightly moderated, so they can pick them at different times of the day too. But the tomato still is much more beneficial for you at small intestine time. When taken from 1 to 3 in the afternoon, that's called small intestine time, it will actually clean your intestines.
Wow.
Particularly when you eat it with a little corn oil that you can get. Good luck getting an organic corn oil these days.
Yeah, that's the wild card that I mentioned with your healing combinations here, your midday elixir. Is it forget which one it is that has the corn oil? But yeah, that shocked. Oh, it's the midday liver detox tonic.
Yeah. The first time I did that, the day I did kind of a fast with it, and I went to the bathroom and I had to run out of the bathroom and hold my nose, and then I went to the bathroom again and again and again and again, 7 times, each time having to run out, hold my nose, and keep flushing the toilet. Whatever that was in me, I'm glad it's out. Yeah, it's an amazing cleanse, and it's surprising how much junk we can pack in the colon. When I was a colon therapist, my buddy, the Leather Tiger, he was a real tough guy, ex-Marine. He said, I just fasted for 3 days, and I took all kinds of enemas and cathartics. You're not going to get anything out of me. I said, oh, yeah? I kept him on the colonic machine for an hour and a half. Normally, you do a half-hour colonic. Stuff came out of them. Even these, when parasites make their little round ball, cotton ball things that they live in, all of those came out as well. So he was rather shocked.
Wow. Yeah, I'd love to get my dad on one of those. I feel like that's a great, if you only did one thing, just like it to kickstart the process, just a colonic. I mean, it's been several years since I did one, but
Yep. And of course, colon time is from 5 to 7 in the morning. We actually are designed, and this is even in the University of California at San Diego, said they knew that the colon turned on between 4 and 6 in the morning. And actually, it turns on at 5. If you turn on earlier, you're slow in metabolism. If you turn on later, you're fast. So you can actually do it. They didn't know that part, but they wondered, golly, it actually turns on as most active. People think they will get peristalsis at any time of the day. That's not how it works. Your first peristalsis is in the morning, ideally at 7 o'clock straight on. And peristalsis means the whole wave goes through your entire colon and sometimes even your small intestine. Otherwise, throughout the day, you get what you call postural shuttling, back and forth, or propulsion, postural propulsion. A little goes a little bit, goes a little bit, goes a little bit. But on a peristaltic wave, if you do it right, you can empty your entire colon. You get that opportunity, interesting enough, 3 times a day. There's that 3 again, the 3 growth periods. So in the morning, in the midday, and in the evening around kidney time, you get your 3rd opportunity to have a really good bowel movement. And if you have them later, there's no problem.
Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to a carnivore guy, and he was saying having less bowel movements is a sign that you're absorbing more of your food, like just like 1 a day or less. And that's such a funny theory, right?
It's funny.
It's like there's less waste.
It might have been on your site that I just answered that this morning. And a lot of people don't know that your typical bowel movement in Western countries, first world countries, including the U.S., is 40% mucus and 40% bacteria, actual bacteria. That's how much your microbiome grows each day. Wow. And then only about, there's some water and then maybe about 3 or 4% roughage compared to like 12% roughage in Africa or some more primitive place where people live off the land. But anyway, many people who fast are surprised that they're still having regular bowel movements because of that. So I answered that. And I think the person said, the point is, and I said, no, the point is, is the other way around. Yeah, I fasted for 15 days back when I didn't know any better. And I was going to the bathroom. Where did it come from? It's mucus and bacteria.
Wow. Yeah, because I came from the world of people talking about mucoid plaque, right? And how that's, it's like there was a worm associated with that or something, a parasite. But there's crazy pictures you can find on Facebook groups.
It really, when I became a colonic therapist, I was interested in finding out about that. It really doesn't exist like they say it does. You can have a really polluted colon, and what it does when you have constipation is it tangles it. I used to take x-rays of colons, and the museum colon goes up, there's a bow shape, and then it comes down, and then there's like a little pipe drain at the end. That doesn't exist. I found one person. Now, I give colonics to younger people. And you saw all of this stuff you see in Death Begins in the Colon, all that kind of stuff. I was shocked. My own colon, when I was in my 40s, my transverse colon was dropped below my belly button. It wasn't up here where it's supposed to be. I'd had a fall off a porch one time that nearly killed me, where I couldn't breathe because I landed on my back, cut my breath off, and I think I damaged it and set it loose. As a colonic therapist, I used to palpate the areas. One guy who had an injury, his transverse colon felt like a metal pipe. You could make it dong, dong, dong when you hit it. just amazing. So anyway, the damage is how it gets distorted in people. And so mucoid plaque, what I did is I pretended I was a college student doing a thesis. And I called hospitals up and asked them, does all this come out and stuff? And a lot of junk does come out in hospitals. But then when I called morticians up and asked them about that, the residue, they laughed at me. So it's not really there. But we do over-retain things. And just because you're going to the bathroom doesn't mean it's all coming out. It's like when water comes down a river bank, how much stays on the side of the river and doesn't go down the stream if there's no rocks and there's just mud on the side. So there can be a collection of junk, and it interferes with the colon. It's not just a pipe. It reabsorbs your minerals to protect you, some of them with 99% efficiency, and also your water so that you don't dehydrate from vomiting or from having diarrhea.
Wow. Yeah, the last few weeks I've been getting back into parasite studies. So that's just fascinating to me. Like I just gave my goat ivermectin today, the paste in their mouth. And I feel like not having enough bowel movements and incomplete digestion, I think most people have parasites. That's my current perspective. Just looking at how unhealthy, people are either constipated or having some type of digestive issue from what I'm seeing.
They often do. I'll tell you a funny story. Again, with my main mentor, Donald Lay. One time, a friend of mine had all kinds of problems, and I wasn't getting to the bottom of it. So finally, she calls me and said, they tell me I have Crohn's disease. How the heck do I have Crohn's disease? And I called Donald Lay up and asked, what should she do with Crohn's disease? He said she doesn't have it. She has pinworms. I said, really? So she went to the doctor and for that. But in the meantime, I looked up pinworms, and it says they go to your heart. And so I called Adana up again and said, what about them going to your heart? They're not interested in her heart. And long story short, she had pinworms. They gave her an antibiotic, and she was fine after that. So yeah, we tend to get a lot of parasites. There can be in viral form. They can be in bacterial form. They can be in fungal form. And we indeed have a microbiome, a virome, and I forget what you call the name of the fungome, but basically the fungus, a lot of fungus are our friends, There are yeasts that help us out and fight the bad funguses, and the same with bacteria and viruses. The good thing is to have our colon so that the microbiome is in our favor, not working against us. And having a bowel movement in large intestine time from 5 to 7 in the morning is a good time to do that, by the way. Clean out and get ready for the day, ideally before you eat breakfast. But solar nutrition, sun sink eating, is designed to, if you don't have your bowel movement at 7, as soon as you eat, you're going to have it. If it's not from the food you eat, which is enough to do it, then the coffee for sure is going to make you have a bowel movement. And then you're close enough to being on time. At stomach time from 7 to 9, the ideal time to eat breakfast.
Yeah, that was another thing that fascinated me the last couple of months of really diving into solar nutrition is the ideal breakfast time. See, I think you said in an interview that usually if people have digestive issues, it's because they're not, or with breakfast, it's because they're not eating it on time between that 7 to 9 window.
Yeah, it's an important time because if the stomach doesn't have something to eat, it starts eating itself. Despite all that hype about H. pylori, which is untrue, your stomach will tend to eat itself under certain circumstances. And if you wake up with stress in the morning, then you better put something in your mouth. but you should put something gentle in your mouth because under stress, your gallbladder will back up into the stomach and sabotage your digestion. So a lot of times, if I get bad news just before I eat, I turn on George Carlin or Jim Carrey or something and get a good laugh and get it out of my system. Then I eat something because those studies were done extensively. It took just mild annoyance to backflush gallbladder fluid into your stomach. Now, Ray Peat says his professor actually measured people's breath in the morning, and before that, their fecal contents, and found fecal matter breath in the breast. So people don't realize it's a two-way street. It's supposed to be designed for a one-way street, but when you lie down flat too, a lot of times it can go back and forth. And a traumatized person, it will backflush. It's called retropropulsion.
Wow. Yeah. So don't go on Facebook and argue with people right before you eat.
Right. Well, I'm cautious about doing that because at one time I saw a cartoon and I realized it was me. Someone's wife was saying, "Come to bed." No, somebody is wrong on Facebook. So I've pretty much got over that syndrome.
Yeah, that's funny. I think I have pretty thick skin since I worked at juvenile hall for 4 years. I just heard it all. Kids would say whatever to me, and so I built that up over the years. So nothing much bothers me anymore.
No, it helps. And there is if a person takes salmon oil or something and gets cured, I got no problem with it. I think it's mostly placebo, but sometimes an omega-3 oil can be used for transplant victims. And if you have extreme inflammation for an emergency, a one-time deal, where fish oil and DHA, EPA, ALA comes in to be a problem is if you exceed 6 weeks. Because at that point, you generate an adrenal response to it. The body regards it as being attacked. That's where the trouble starts. So many people, they take the fish oil. I don't have any problem. Then later on, a year later or so, when their adrenal kickback starts happening, then they never equate it with that. They equate it with whatever they ate the night before instead of in the weeks before.
Yeah, it's funny. I saw a post that someone was talking about Charles Poliquin, the Canadian bodybuilder, and I think they said he's prescribing fish oil, like, I forget, 10, 15, 20 grams a day. And I was thinking, no, he was like 50 to 70 grams. That's documented. That's what he was recommending. And he died of a heart attack at 57. Like if that doesn't tell you right there what it does.
Yeah, there's a big difference between fitness and longevity too. A lot of bodybuilders do well on a keto diet. They get performance out of it. But there's been nobody who's been on keto long enough to tell if they can make it to centenarianism or further, because people mistake like a lion is keto. No way. It would have to eat 75% fat to be keto. It's not keto by eating protein. Plus, they even get a little bit of vegetables in the intestines when they do it as well. We have cats around here. They're always nibbling on the grass all the time. I think he's a vegetarian because he eats so much grass. We see him always at the green sprouts come out of the ground. He's eating them.
That's funny. I ran out of cat food since I moved back from Colorado, like my wet cat food, the cans. And I found a brand that doesn't have salmon oil or herring oil or any PUFA oil in it. And I'm so excited. I hope, they seem to like it. So I'm switching it to that because I think they'll live longer.
Yeah. The funny thing is, vets, if you go to a vet, they'll know what yellow fat disease is, particularly with dealing with cats. And they know it's tuna. But then they'll recommend a food with DHA because they don't realize that DHA is just a code name for omega-3. It's the same thing in tuna or whatever that's killing the cats in the first place. So it's humorous about that the message, well, they don't want people to get that message or the vets to get that message. And I bet only 1 in a million vets knows that.
Yeah, a little off track for a minute here, but I know you're writing a ebook on copper. I can't wait to buy that. And Morley Robbins I had on the show. He's like a frequent flyer like you. I think I only have you guys on the most consistently, and he believes that copper is the cure for lipofuscin. And then you'll hear Ray Peat say vitamin E maybe not cures it, but slows its progression. And it's interesting, these different perspectives. And then a guy, I have his poster here, John Ferber, he was on did a lecture on lipofuscin, I think the only one on YouTube that I found, and he recommended like a pharmaceutical drug for lipo. So it's interesting, like the antidote. And I think I saw you post on Facebook the other day, there is a cure for it, but it's not healthy or something, right?
Yeah, they have ways of, first of all, the laser thing, but that's just going to work on the skin. But they actually have drugs that work on it. But then those drugs are more toxic. Lipofuscin, the closest thing to it is aging. So very few people are going to take fish oil even for several years and notice anything's happening. But it speeds up their aging, where they will notice it if they get one of the age-related diseases, like brown bowel disease is actually code for Crohn's disease. They now know that. They didn't know it. They classified them as two different diseases. The old brown bowel disease now they know is just a subclinical level of Crohn's disease. Well, all of these diseases of aging are Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, muscular sclerosis, muscular dystrophy, mixed dementia, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole list. Even autism. And recently, I just discovered that, what is the disease called? Basically, you're allergic to the sun and you break out. It's omega-3s, highly involved with lipofuscin making a, a photochemical reaction and getting reactive oxygen species activated.
Wow. Interesting. It's so funny that we have all these names of diseases and a lot of them could just be simplified to lipofuscin. Right?
Yeah, I researched them and found lipofuscin increased in every one of them to sometimes maximum degrees. And lipofuscin, see, they used to think it's just a waste product. So who cares? If I live in a room and I just clutter it with a bunch of extra furniture and junk lying around, don't throw it out. Big deal. I can still get to my computer. I can go sideways to the kitchen, no problem. But then they noticed that lipofuscin is aggressive. It attacks. It attacks other cells and brings lipofuscin into other cells. That kind of set them for a loop. And the aging expert Aubrey de Grey, he has all kinds of drug ideas. He's trying to clear lipofuscin out of people's body. He devotes a great amount of time because in his 7 deadly sins of aging, two of them are lipofuscin inside the cell, lipofuscin outside the cell. Inside's in the mitochondria, outside's in the outside spaces. And he knows, though it's not clear in his book, that what's called glycation or age, what do they call that? Age-related, it's basically sugar eating you up. He knows it's actually fatty acids that do it, or certain proteins, amyloids, and fatty acids. So 3 of the 7 deadly sins of aging are actually involved with with a lipofuscin and omega-3 fatty acids. So I think anyone interested in aging better consider that, or they're going to have problems down the line.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, Adam, about the juices. There's 2 like Midday tomato juice drinks, and then the one I've been loving is the cranberry grape juice for kidney time, 5 to 7. I'd imagine that fresh squeezed will give a better effect, but if you get it from the store, like organic, not from concentrate, probably works too, right?
That's how we get it, like pineapple juice. Rather than get pineapple that comes over from Hawaii and goes through all that stuff anyway, we get, what is the name of the brand? Lakewood brand. I get their tomato
that's
juice.
The one I get. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I use their tomato juice and I use their pineapple juice. At this point, that's the only two juices we're really drinking other than coffee and something left over from some fruit that we have. But anyway, the in the morning, your orange juice is really good at spleen pancreas time, and it's like how did Donald explain it? The orange juice, when you take it at that time, is like the cops coming to clear the wreckage after an accident, and then the second drink, the tomato juice and the molasses, or tomato juice and corn oil, which is a bit extreme. So tomato juice and molasses is a good version, or raisins, is the ambulance showing up on the scene and taking people away. And the final pineapple juice and aloe vera with a little bit of tequila, if you'd like, is the accident being cleared so the traffic can start moving. So my friend was an engineer. His name is Hugo Conti. I haven't seen him for years, but he used to realize that it was kind of like shaking water off your hand during the day. If you do it once, you don't get all the water, but if you shake it multiple times, you tend to get the water. He said that trauma and toxins work the same way, and that's one of the principles of solar eating and sun sink eating, is that you get repetition that actually forms a habit. It's well known that old people tend to desynchronize from the sun. They can't go to sleep. They get insomnia. They get all these problems. You have a farmer. They're not going to have that. They go out and work in the field and they sleep like all night, and then they wake up at 3 a.m. Now, if you go to a doctor and you say you wake up at 3 a.m, he's going to say you have FAST. Basically, it means you're waking up too soon and it's a disease. Well, that means every farmer in the world, and I've lived on farms where they wake up at 2:30 in the morning to eat breakfast and then get out there. They're working before the sun ever comes up or it even gets light. Well, every farmer in the world then is diseased. And of course, it's ridiculous. Ideally, a healthy person will actually wake up at 3 a.m. They can meditate or do Tai Chi or something like that. Most of us don't because of our schedules, but a healthy person, their eyes will just open up at 3 a.m. and they'll get up and do something. And 10 to 3 is an ideal sleeping time until you figure out how to beat sleep like Donald Lay did. He didn't need to sleep.
Wow. 10 to 3. Yeah, I've been. Sorry, there's a little lag. That really rings true, the 10 to 3 thing, 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Because if I'm asleep during that time, my next day is every time it's always a better day. And if I go to bed at 10:30 or 11 or midnight, it's a totally different day. And I've done this experiment hundreds of times, and it always ends up the same way. So
it works better for me. And sometimes I stay up really late, especially when you get to writing something. But my early to bed, and when I get up early before the sun comes up, that's my best days, actually. So, and there's something to it. My own mother said every day, every hour before 12 is worth 2 hours of sleep. You know, as kids, man, we better be to bed at 8 o'clock. And we had the flashlights with the comics under. They'd catch us every time. Yeah, that was strict rules.
Yeah. If I stay up too late and my brain hurts the next day, the best cure I've found is eating food, even if I'm not hungry, because I'll lose my appetite if I'm underslept. just making sure to have sugar coming in. And then I like taking a nap in my hyperbaric chamber, even 20, 30 minutes. And I feel like I slept all night. So,
Yeah, it can make a difference. Also, one of those gravity machines where you lie on a pattern and set it up, that can wake you up too. It was one of Donald Lay's tricks again. I learned from him that he could be on a traveling trip where he looked so tired and actually old, walking 10 minutes later, come out look like a teenager. They're remarkable. He was kind of a shapeshifter anyway, so that's a whole different story.
Yeah, I need to get back to inverting because I stopped, and I have some wooden beams here. I could probably hang it up. It's just on springs that swing. I know it's the extreme way to do it because you're completely upside down.
I would do it at a 45-degree angle, and I was such a fanatic at one time. Every acupuncture hour, that's every 2 hours, I would do 20 minutes. And I'd be writing newsletters in between, whenever I was awake. Obviously, there was some time I wasn't awake, but I would often stay up late. So I might be doing it for 10 to 12 acupuncture hours. Yeah, I did it quite frequently when I was alone. And sometimes if someone visited me and I knew him well, I'd just get on there and talk to him while I was upside down.
It reminds me of the movie, did you ever see Wayne's World, where the musician's hanging upside down in his living room like a bat when he walks in?
Hey, I'd forgotten that. No. Hey, by the way, one of the reasons that a gravity machine is good for you, and I used to walk on my hands a lot and do a lot of headstands and arm stands, elbow stands, the scorpion, I think they call it, and things like that, is because if you look at an iris, the arcus senilis, which is old age, appears on the top. Why does it appear on the top? Often called the sodium ring incorrectly. And then at the bottom, you'll get another deposit. And if you look at it, if you ever make ghee yourself out of butter, it's the same thing. Foam on the top, the arcus senilis, and then the heavy matter at the bottom and the part in between. Well, by going upside down, you can juggle that around in your body and even the iris. Theoretically, if you stayed upside down 24 hours a day, your arcus senilis would now be on the top of the iris, not on the bottom anymore. So anyway, there's advantages for us to be upside down some of the day in either a gravity machine or people that can stand on their heads. Satchidananda, after he learned all his yoga, he only did one posture, a headstand for a half hour every morning.
Wow. Yeah, one of my friends, Robert Kassar, I think for like 10 years, he's been talking about the mercury, thinking how it's heavy, and so it accumulates in your feet with gravity. And when you hang upside down, it's kind of like a mercury detox because it moves up your system.
Very interesting, because on the periodic table of the elements, all the light elements are on the top and the heavy ones settle to the bottom. Yeah, exactly how it works. And in our bodies, it's the same way. Those heavier elements tend to go down, and that's why the feet get more toxic than the hands, because everything goes down there. All the millimeters of mercury can get to, 120 millimeters of mercury, while up at your thyroid, it's 10, especially if you stand still.
Wow.
Yeah,
so Adam, I wanted to ask you about... Yeah, that's so fascinating. I wanted to ask you about apple cider vinegar, because back in my raw vegan days, I was slamming it way more than I have the last, 5 years or so. And I was putting tons on my salad every night. And you actually got me interested in it again, because I was using it on my raw carrot salad, which I think Ray Pete recommends white vinegar or something, but I've always used apple cider vinegar. But I noticed you integrate that in a lot of your recipes. Like you have coffee and 2 teaspoons of ACV at heart time, 11:1. And even just the honey and apple cider vinegar circulation sex time, 7-9. I've been doing that. And my friend Beverly actually asked in the questions, like, it's making her feel so much better. And she's wondering why. Like, is there a synergy with the ACV and the honey, or what does ACV do?
There's something to it, and the original Vermont folk medicine guy that started that, whatever his name was, he even wrote articles about it in the Reader's Digest back in the 50s. He said it was the potassium. Other people have said other things. It's the acid. No, it does this, whatever. Whatever it is, I had a profound experience with it. Back in the day, 1970, I believe it was, I was diagnosed with incurable arthritic gout. And I was supposed to be on a purine-free diet and everything. Well, I didn't like the idea, so I went to a company dinner or lunch right after that and ate all the things that were wrong for me. But then I really straightened out and ate correctly. So I went to the doctor. I went to the doctor and checked, and he accused me of eating purine foods and sent me next door to the hospital to get tested again. I was low in purine, so he was confused. He had put me on a drug. I was stupid enough back then to take their drugs. So I said, should I keep taking it then? And he got annoyed because I was being sarcastic, obviously. He said no. And basically, he dismissed me as a patient. He was a pretty nice guy, but I annoyed him. Anyway, so here I was still stuck with incurable arthritic gout, hard to lift my arm and all kinds of things. So I go to a public library and I find the ARE journal, which is associated with Edgar Cayce. So I read that it said to take apple cider vinegar with a calcium supplement and get rid of arthritis. And an astrology book, weirdly enough, had said those in the mid-decade, which I was in, of Aquarius, will have arthritis. I said, whoa, that's me. So anyway, I went and did the apple cider vinegar and the thing, and it didn't help. Then I read you're supposed to do it right after the meal with apple cider vinegar and honey, and then take it with it. And it's in 8 ounces of water, 2 teaspoons of honey, 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. And within 2 days, my incurable arthritic gout was gone completely, and I could move everything. So I stopped taking it after 3 days. I figured, well, I'm well. But what I did, it said to do it 3 times a day. I felt funny about doing it in the morning, so I did it at midday with my lunch, midday with dinner. Doing that 4 times got rid of the problem completely. Who knows? Maybe placebo was involved too, but it was dramatic. Later, when I met Donald Lay, he said, don't take apple cider vinegar in the morning, take it at midday and nighttime. And I thought, wow, I did that in 1970, 5 or 6 years before I ever met Donald, when I was in Redding, California. And anyway, before that, I was even having pre-symptoms before that when I could barely move my arm up. Doctors were looking at me back in the early 60s too. And then I had a relapse up there, which was diagnosed as incurable arthritic gout. The doctor said, you'll be on medicine the rest of your life. Well, here I am. That was 1960. That's a long time ago. Yeah, a long time ago.
That's incredible. Yeah, I know Patricia Bragg has been really into it. Interesting.
Yep. We often use their Patricia Bragg comes to the farmers market here once in a while.
Oh, wow.
Haven't seen her in a long time. And Katy Perry bought the business. And
wow.
What's her husband name? Orlando Bloom. They bought the business now. Yeah, the lady in pink they call her, and we use Bragg's, or basically we buy a good one. Because here's a trick: you can use the regular. What's the stuff you buy in the grocery store? Heinz vinegar. But here's something people don't know: if you look at the pint bottle, it's real. If you buy the quart bottle, it's real. If you buy the one in the plastic jug, it's fake. It's nothing but colored regular acetic acid, not apple cider vinegar at all.
Wow.
How they get away with that? They're still doing it. I checked recently. They've been doing that for decades. So don't buy the large one. Otherwise, Heinz is okay. You don't need the mother and all that fancy stuff, but we prefer to use a organic type of product.
Yeah. One thing that's fascinating with solar nutrition is the supplements. Someone that sells supplements, I feel like this is advanced solar nutrition because I looked at your list. I'm like, how am I ever going to remember all of these? But as far as like repeat supplements, like niacinamide, vitamin E, thyroid, what would be the times for like those common ones?
Niacinamide does better at bladder time from 3 to 5. But sometimes if you have an emergency, a snake bite or a bee sting or a poison oak exposure, you can take it at other times a day. But each one, you judge the supplement on what its source was. So when people say, I get my calcium from oyster shells, that works great for the calcium in zone 3. But not for their brain and other places. Or say you wanted vitamin C. Well, I'll get it from acerola. Well, acerola is a scam. Basically, they use synthetic vitamin C or laboratory made and put a pinch of acerola in a whole bunch. Well, I get my Midday from rosehip. Same thing. So mostly it's sourced out of corn, I believe. But then you can get it from sago palm and from tapioca. They're both morning. One, tapioca's, evening. Tapioca obviously is a root. But sago palm, at first I thought, well, that's a tree. Yeah. But no, they take it right at the base of the tree. And so it's actually a nighttime. So no one out there at this point is selling a morning vitamin C. It only a fake one like acerola, which is not acerola. It's either going to be corn, it's going to be tapioca, or it's going to be sago. I think they might have a fourth one now. And the same with rose hips. Now, rose hips are very powerful. My mother, when she lived in Sweden, she just picked the rose hips off the roses. They knew about that back in golly. She left Sweden in 1916, so it's been long. It's been known for a long time. But anyway, if you look at where it comes from, like let's see, what other sources do you get calcium from? You can get it from Midday, and it's harder to get the morning sources because they're less. Minerals are heavy; they go to the bottom. So obviously, you're going to get most of your minerals from roots and Midday, and the trees tend to have less of them because they're lighter. They don't need heavy metals. If they're going to go upward, you don't want to build with heavy construction material. You want to keep that on your foundation. So basically, that's how it works. But everything has a preferred time. When you get into drugs, they synthesize it so much that the timing rules kind of change. You have to look at what the drug targets. If it targets the liver, it might be safer to take it at liver time and have it when the liver is functioning at its maximal. And that gets a little bit complicated, but taking the supplement, one time there was a product. Have you ever heard of Cyclone cider?
I haven't, no.
It's still you can still find it, but it's not as popular. There was a guy here in Santa Barbara who came and saw me, and he was mad because the owner of the health food store that I managed wouldn't let him do his presentation about his herb combination. So he complained about it, and I said, instead of going from health food store to health food store, since your product is solar, he said, what's that? Everything in it is a nighttime food. He said, really? I said, yeah. Why don't you go find a national distributor? Well, who? He said. And I pulled out the first catalog. How about the ginseng company? Well, he became a millionaire. He never came back to me, but if you looked at the back of Yoga Journal, the full back page was Cyclone cider, because this one company made him sign an exclusive contract. You just do business with us, no one else, and we'll promote your product. He became a worldwide sensation. Nowadays, a lot of health food stores don't have it, but you can ask them to order it. And I think it was still out there about a year ago when I looked it up, if it's still around. But anyway, it was all root type foods. So when you look at herb combinations, one of the problems is they mix it all. So suppose you want to take a supplement that's mixed. Find out what is the problem that you have. If you have a brain problem, take that mix at the morning time, because the other products aren't going to be harmful for you. They're supplements and they're small amounts. So just take it what you want to target. If it's got ginseng in it and also some kind of apple product or something like that, you want it for your genitals or your liver, you take it at nighttime. So no problem. In fact, doctors used to say, they'll say, take this 3 times a day. So a week later, you call back, doctor, that seems to disagree with me at midday. Well, then take it at morning and night. He disagrees with me now in the morning. We'll take it at night. 3 times, you get the supplement when you want, each time at least. Because even if it's out of time, it's eventually going to get to the right place. It's just like you get more bang for your buck if it goes directly there instead of has to take the side roads to get where it's going. So you will survive by eating foods out of time. If you reversed it totally, you might start having problems right away. But most people, your body will adjust it. However, when you eat on time, you get more energy automatically because there's less metabolic processes involved in getting you up and at 'em in the morning and doing things.
Yeah,
so you will
makes
get
sense.
more long story short.
I wanted to ask, does transit time change things with solar timing? Like, I had a woman on my show and we're talking about, Ray Peat's carrot, the raw carrot. And I forget how many hours, but she was saying it's like an insane transit time for carrots, that it stays in your body for like 8 hours or something like that. I think, I don't know, 6 to 8 hours. It was a really long time. But do the different foods, how long they take to get through the intestinal tract, does that alter?
Most of them will go through in a healthy colon. Ideally, we're designed to eat breakfast and get rid of our breakfast at dinner. Eat lunch and get rid of our lunch at breakfast. Eat dinner and get rid of our dinner at lunch. That's how it's designed for 2/3 of the day, like that. You can check that by eating a bunch of beets at one time, or even take charcoal and see how fast it's going. That's ideal. You can have variations in that, but ideally, when you eat foods on time, you're virtually guaranteed 3 bowel movements a day. Well, if you ate the old, it was an old books by the Diamonds, where they claimed it was circadian rhythms. But basically, it was a food combining diet that they did. Eat your carbohydrates in the morning, proteins. They didn't bother to differentiate with it. What I learned from Donald Lay actually had a history of probably coming from Germany with the so-called nature boys. Gypsy Boots was a nature boy. Eden Bez, was that his name? He was a nature boy. The guy who wrote Nature Boy, I think he wrote. And one of the most famous ones was a friend of Rudolph Valentino. He lived down in Death Valley. And they all Palm Springs area. They all came from Germany at the time of Hermann Hesse. They had a movement in Germany where everybody threw off their clothes and grew their hair long, walked off into the woods, had lots of sex, and ate lots of nothing but natural foods. When Hitler came to power, he had to figure a way to get rid of the nature boy movement. That was one of his main logistical problems, by forming basically the brown shirts and all of that. Were recruiting the nature boys under false pretenses. But the nature boy movement came to California, and I personally knew Gypsy Boots. He was a remarkable man. You can find some videos on him. But I didn't realize when I knew him that he had studied with the Richters, who had 3 cafeterias in the LA area, one at the top of Laurel Canyon, where they knew about timing of foods. They just had a few things different, making pineapple a midday food, not understanding that there's certain exceptions to the rule, and that But basically, they knew all about this timing that's been going on for a long time, that people realize that the growth period makes a difference, makes you healthier. The Richters wrote their first book in the 20s, I believe, but they had their cafeteria back in the days in the 1918, 16, somewhere around there. And a big fan of Gypsy Boots, by the way, was Michael Douglas and Kirk Douglas. He would deliver vegetables to them a long time. Look at Kirk Douglas, 104, I believe he lived to, and his wife lived 103. Right here in Montecito, they lived.
Yeah, I love your pictures on solar timing, Adam then and now, and your picture with Gypsy Boots is great. You guys look really happy.
Oh, he was an amazing character, man. People got mad at him for not acting his age. I mean, he would jump up and down. If I would pull out a camera, let me take a picture of you. He said, "Wait a minute." He'd jump up on the counter and have some fruit and go, like he was going to eat the fruit, or he'd stand in front of the store and pound his chest. I have some great photos of him. You pull out a camera and Gypsy went crazy. Oh, he was a great guy. What energy. But he knew about time nutrition, and I had no clue at the time until I found out about this, about the Richters, and that he had actually worked at the Richter's place in Laurel Canyon, as did Eden Nebez, the guy who wrote Nature Boy. There was a boy, you know that song. He bought a ranch off that song alone after Harry Belafonte sang it.
Wow. So finishing up on Midday, Adam, since we talked about parasites for a minute, and we're pretty much in a full moon, well, maybe not by the time this posts, but you have pumpkin seeds on there and parasite cleansers, not for everyday use, but you say 32 days from full moon to full moon, take pumpkin seeds. Does that actually work pretty well?
Because you want to kill the eggs. Yeah, no, you have to be careful with pumpkin seeds. It's probably good to start with about a full cup, but check your tolerance on them, because there are chemicals that are killing the parasites that are in the pumpkin seeds too. And you start out with about close to a full cup of them at midday, and then you go down to a half a cup, and don't miss a day and have them at the same time. Ideally, you would take walnut hulls in the morning, pumpkin seed in the middle of the day, and tequila at circulation sex time at night. Then you cover all the areas that the parasites are going to be at. But friends of mine took about a whole bunch of pumpkin seeds. I think it was like a pound or something, which is dangerous. They both got heart palpitations because they misunderstood that. So always when you start eating something like pumpkin seeds, those are particularly powerful seeds and excellent for a man's prostate, by the way. Excellent for them. There's been cures of prostatitis by simply doing. In fact, I witnessed one. A guy comes in to the health food store and wanted prune juice, and he said, "It's for my prostate hurts, and I'm on drugs for my prostate." And I said, "Well, why don't you take pumpkin seeds?" So he said, "Tell me about it." And he's with his buddy, so they're kind of giving themselves the wink. Let's hear this guy's rap. So he joked, "Okay, you convinced me. I'm going to buy a bag." I get a call an hour later. "Man, how many bags have you got? My pain's completely gone." That thing's really worked. So anyway, pumpkin seeds are kind of an amazing protein in them, and I'm not sure exactly what the ingredients are, but they're well known for favoring a man's prostate.
Wow. Kind of a random question. What about tobacco? Because I've triggered some people recently, not fully recommending smoking to everybody, but just highlighting that, finches and sparrows build their nests out of cigarette butts because the nicotine repels mites, and that nicotine is a well-known anti-parasitic. And I love smoking cigars, and I generally just naturally do it at night. It just feels like the best time. Like, I don't know, 5 to 8 or somewhere in there. Do you think there's a time for ingesting tobacco that's ideal?
Midday.
Oh, wow.
Midday is actually the time. It's a growth time, and it's tricky. You have to really be careful of your lungs, but you get much less damage when you take it at midday. It's a midday plant, does most of its metabolism at that time, and it's basically almost in the grass family. It provides its own nitrogen. It's been noted that it is medicinal, and you just have to be careful when you're using it and not overdo it. But it definitely is a medicine, even against Alzheimer's disease. It's been recommended for certain things. So midday.
Awesome. Yeah. I always tell people like whole food vitamin C and vitamin E, because when vitamin E is spent, vitamin C regenerates it. And those two I've seen in the research help smokers. Like if smokers just took those supplements, they'd be better off.
Even interesting enough, though it's now I don't know if this research is genuine, but they claim by having 1 carrot a day at nighttime protects your lungs the next morning, so that the lung cancer is half as prevalent in someone that has 1 carrot a day. Now, regular beta carotene that you buy in the store is not the same as the stuff in the carrot. And Ray Peat is not a big beta carotene man, and I think you can get too much of it. But a lot of beta carotene, he claims that the carrot is used for dietary fiber and doesn't digest. Well, William Beaumont proved otherwise back in the 1820s and 30s, that a carrot, raw or cooked, digests at the same speed, but it leaves dietary fiber behind. Definitely the dietary fiber goes into the large intestine that you don't get as much from the cooked carrot, which brings up an interesting question I've dwelled on. What if I cooked a carrot or a food and I really needed calories to gain weight? If I cooked a food for several days, would all the dietary fiber be gone? Would it all break down into sugar? Because obviously, if just a half hour of cooking can get rid of that much dietary fiber, what can 6 hours of cooking do? And if you need the extra calories because you're low on food, could you do that? Build a fire and just cook something for a long time if you're out in the wilderness and starving. So that's a good question to ask Ray Peat.
That is a good one. That's interesting. My solar people, the last time they were here fixing stuff, they broke my oven. So the stovetop works, but not the oven. So I've been cooking all my stuff on top of my wood stove or on my little grill on my deck. So it's been a lot more work, but I keep a fire going all day long anyway, so it's not too big of a deal. But it was a learning curve with potatoes because everyone said, wrap your potatoes in aluminum foil. And I tried it without, and it ruined them. So there's something about wrapping them in aluminum foil that really helps. I don't know what it is.
Well, it's basically a steamed potato instead of a baked potato. That's why they taste a lot different. And you get more out of it, but you're going to get a certain amount of protein out of a steamed potato too. In fact, a potato, a lot of people don't realize it's we get all of the copper we need for a day out of 2 baked potatoes. All of the copper you need. They're extremely rich in copper. Really surprising. They're close to oysters, which startled me. I didn't realize there was that much copper in a potato. Now, if you eat a French fry, you get about a fraction of that. You don't get enough. You'd have to eat a room full of French fries to get the copper for a day if you ate French fries. So, but it happens to be you will get your maximum amount of, if you're looking for copper, do the steamed potato then, because in the foil, because you will get a little more copper because the dextrinization somehow compromises a lot of it. By the way, lentils are a good source of copper, but if you sprout them, which is something Ray Peat does approve of, you get double the copper out of a sprouted potato. So it's not just the content that's in it, It's a content that you digest and can handle with your body, which, by the way, back to timing, that helps it. You get more of that mineral content. It's kind of like a sniper. Most people do nutrition like throw a hand grenade and get that one guy in that crowd, a carpet bomb. Instead, that's the guy with the gun that's a bad guy. The other guys are okay. Let's just get a sniper up here, pick them off, and then you don't have to lose all the other energy that you would get out of something. So I like to think of using a military analogy that solar is like timing things so that you have a sniper's approach instead of a carpet bombing approach.
That's great. That is a good analogy. And so I enjoy my steaks. So that's a midday food, right? To grill a steak. For a while I was doing it at night. So
yeah, your midday, your muscles, the heart is highly tied into muscles, the heart meridian. And that's the secret of the so-called mesomorph. They tend to have the muscles. And that's midday. All the foods that to build muscles are pretty much in the midday, including tomatoes, which are probably the richest in free-form amino acid of any food in the planet, right there. So you get free-form amino acids. You eat a hamburger, you get the regular protein, you get the free forms from the tomatoes, and you're good to go and go build muscles.
You have me really excited this summer. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Look at Bill Pearl. He was a vegetarian since he's 39. He won all those bodybuilding contests. He's still a vegetarian, a strength guy. So some people just do better than meat. Frankly, when I eat meat, I get a little stronger. I'm not sure if it's psychological or whatever, but I noticed a difference when I went completely vegetarian, ovo-lacto-vegetarian. I lost some strength. So could be. I'm not total vegetarian today, or total ovo-lacto-vegetarian, egg, dairy, so-and-so. Once in a while, I have a hamburger or something as a kind of a spice.
Yeah, I saw you post something, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, that if you live in a colder climate, you need your protein requirements are higher. And that's so interesting, since moving from Southern California up to Idaho, I have increased my protein intake and I feel a lot more resilient to the cold and a lot better. It's really interesting.
Yeah, on the seasonal approach, a lot of people, they go into seasonal timing and they say eat more of your fruits and your vegetables when it's warmer and eat your grains and your meats during the winter. And the same thing goes with climate. You're going to need a slightly different climate to deal with cold than with heat, especially the type of tropical heat where it doesn't really bother you and you can cool off in the water anytime. Then you really don't need that much protein. In fact, quite a bit less, the studies tend to show. But you actually lose a lot of protein as a gas through your skin. That surprised a lot of scientists when they measure that you lose it. Right? That's why athletes, when they run marathons, they do lose, indeed, a lot of protein that way through nitrogen gas.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of like influencers or, health educators, whatever, right now saying that, muscle's the best longevity organ or whatever. And I never see them talking about how carbs spare protein. Like, you don't need as much protein if you have sugar coming in, right?
Yep. And that was a big thing. Back in the day when I was a gym rat, I read as many as, close to 15 or 16 bodybuilding books per month. I was a favorite at the newsstand. I would actually go down to Hollywood to get Australian bodybuilding books. And I would get the women's exercising books, all the Weider books, all the Bob Hoffman books, all the whatever, Iron Man, all those books, and go through them. And they definitely knew that you need that carbs spare protein to keep them from breaking down. Indeed, William Budd, back in 1848, found out that when people would die of type 1 diabetes, they called it sugar diabetes. And he realized, but you're breaking the sugar down out of your muscles. So what you do is he gave him as much as 12 ounces of white sugar and 4 ounces of honey per day. He measured that out in the urine. That was his average. And then they didn't die. It wasn't a cure for diabetes, but as long as they ate all that sugar, they stayed alive for years. Well, without drugs, type 1 diabetes is a very serious thing. You die very quickly, especially if you don't get dialysis and all the things that happen. But here, William Budd, back in the day, been totally forgotten that he actually had a remedy to keep a person alive for type 1 diabetes. Type 2 is a lot easier. That isn't even really diabetes, as Ray Peters pointed out, and is right. It's basically poor metabolism is what it is.
Right. Kicked on my blue light here just to get me going.
That's cool.
So nighttime, moving on to that, just the last growth zone here, between 6:30 and 1 a.m. It's funny, just kicking it off, you have reptiles on the list. So if you're going to eat turtle or alligator, it's a nighttime food, right?
Because they tend to eat that. Most people don't. Well, if you're in Louisiana, they definitely eat alligator steaks and turtles. My friend Steve Chivers probably eating alligator. I wouldn't surprise. He's from Florida. I'm sure he's eating it. He's a very brave, adventurous food guy.
Yeah.
He's my contentious friend. You've probably seen him on Facebook.
Yeah. He likes to debate.
Oh boy, I tell you. He was my original reflexology teacher even before I met O'Donnell. He knows a lot of stuff, definitely. But anyway, at nighttime, you get most of your minerals. And there's even a book called Potatoes, Not Prozac, because there's something in the potato that sets you up to break the fast. That's what breakfast is. You're fasting. I virtually fast over that time, except I eat sugar and I have a little coffee sometimes when I wake up, because the evidence is there that so many people die in their sleep just simply because they won't take a teaspoon of sugar or a chunk of some kind of little snack that has carbohydrates in, or maybe a little coffee. And then they don't have, what is it called when you stop breathing in the middle of the night?
Yeah, I've been doing salt every night before sleep, and that seems to really help.
Sleep
just
apnea.
Having a little bit of salt. Oh, sleep apnea. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it protects that. I even have a grammar school buddy now. I think he saw me writing that, or maybe he did it already. He has a sugar cube by his bed, so every time he gets up to go to the bathroom, he puts it in his mouth. In fact, if I'm under stress and I wake up, I have a jar of sugar next to me, a mayonnaise jar from the old days. So I open the lid, put a little in my palm, lick it, and lick about a third of a teaspoon, maybe half of a teaspoon. If I'm feeling stressed, I'll have a couple of teaspoons worth before I ever get vertical. Because one time when I was out of high school, I went and saw my wife's grandmother. She got up and dropped over dead right in front of her eyes. So Ray Pete is on to that thing. After you're in an extreme state of rest and then you wake up, especially suddenly, you're in danger. So sugar is an answer to that. So again, before I even get vertical, I just put some sugar in my mouth, particularly if I feel stressed.
Wow. Yeah, I'm so fortunate to have goats here, because in between meals, I just put white sugar in my goat milk, and I'll just have glasses in between my meals.
Perfect. Yeah, and goat, it's a superior form of dairy, too. Definitely. I drank my share of goat milk, and also sheep feta cheese and goat feta cheese. They're really excellent products. Donald Lay was not a big fan of milk, but he was of any kind of a goat product, the feta cheeses and things like that. Oh. He said that Essene bread and goat cheese or sheep cheese was really good for building muscle, midday food again. Because when I went through the bodybuilding phase, following his advice, cold liquids and doing things like that. My proudest moment when one of the guys in the gym came up to me and whispered, "Are you on steroids?" And if I don't exercise, I just get thin. I get so thin that if I stand sideways and stick out my tongue, people think I'm a zipper. But when I'm at the gym, I build muscle.
That's funny. Yeah, my strongest moment was the first time I ate like a pound of grass-fed ground beef at once. I did a standing ab roll. My two bodybuilding friends were just staring at me. That's the only time I was able to do that.
Yeah.
So the wild.
I always had trouble with.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say I never did like meat. I liked the flavor of the condiments more. I had an in-law that would get angry. He loved steak. I'd pull out ask for the ketchup, and when he saw me pour the ketchup on, he would actually get mad at me. You're ruining the taste of a good steak. I put ketchup on tomatoes even. I love ketchup.
Wow. Yeah, I'm kind of intuitive with it. Like for several months the last few years, I went top sirloin steak every single day. But then I would intuitively feel my body just say, hey, take a day or two off or take a week off. And I would take breaks. And I think more people need to tune into that instead of going on the carnivore diet or whatever diet, right?
Yeah, too much meat. Meat actually can save a life sometimes if you have a certain amount of it. But if you ate nothing but meat, it shortens your lifespan. But athletics, it can work very well. I met an athlete who ate one meal a day when I was in junior high, actually. I met him because he was in high school. He was kind of a hero. He ate steak and something else for breakfast. That was all he ate. And this guy, I saw him catch a football while doing a full flip on the field one time. This guy must have gone on to be some kind of professional athlete because he was awesome. He was admired by all of us as a superhero, but he ate one meal a day. Now, I'd like to see how long he lived if he continued that. This Russian bodybuilder, he eats one meal a day, too. He says sometimes he cheats a little, and he only eats vegetables. He hates vegetables, but he eats them because it's a necessary evil. But long term, people who eat lower on the food chain, but sometimes eat a little bit as a condiment if they're looking for long life. But look at that, what's his name? The Turban Tornado. He's 109, maybe 110 now. And he was running 25-mile marathons when he was 101. And he never took a pill in his life. And he didn't eat meat. He had a little dairy. And then he had the regular Indian type foods that they have, made out of lentils and dal and that type of thing. But lower on the food chain, I think if you're looking for years, but again, meat can save your life. Particularly, the main thing that meat does is people tend to get over alkaline, and eating meat will change that dramatically. It's not just the protein; there's other factors in meat that are involved. And though alkaline diets are raved about, they actually kill people because your life force is in the proteins and the acids. That's why a cook puts the lid on the pot to save the acids from going away. The minerals aren't going any place. They're heavy. They sink to the bottom of the pot. So you're always going to get the minerals, but the life-giving acids go away, the volatile ones that you eat citrus for, and you eat fruit for, and you eat carbs for.
Wow. Do you and Vibrant Gal do a lot of soups at night? Because I noticed you have a couple. I haven't made soup at home in years. I think I grew up with soup, but it seems like a pretty easy meal to make, right? Because you just throw stuff in water and let it go. And
Yep, pretty much just throw it in the pot and let it cook. Now, we were doing that in December because we had a cold wave here and we didn't have a heater, and it got really cold here. we're all dressed with, I had my hoodie with the hood on, and Vibrant Gal had all kinds of stuff, a hat and a blanket wrapped around her and the whole thing. So we switched to soup. We ate potato soup at night because it warmed us up much better. We're back pretty much eating baked potatoes again, but soup is a good way to get minerals too, because as Ray Pete has pointed out, the more that cooks like in a crock pot, the more elements you get out of it. And you can get everything that when people say, I can't get enough calcium or something like that, or magnesium, you can get it out of soups. And the more it's cooked, the better. He recommends up to 3 hours. And if you think about it, I had a buddy that left stuff in his crock pot running all day. He was basically cooking it for 20 hours, and he just went and took the lid off the pot, ate some. And when I stayed with him, I gained 5 pounds.
Well, I should do that on my wood stove because I have a chaga tea going on there 24/7. I just keep it, and I start it and I wake up, and then I just keep throwing logs in all day long. So I'm going to experiment. On your website, you have a evening liver soup, which is onions, carrots, a little bit of garlic and ginger, and then you have you said you could put in beets as well and salt, right? That's kind of like the combination there.
Beets are really good for the liver. That guy doing that beet cleanse, he's on to something. You can overdo it, but now the beets you want though are not. They have to be organic, and there's a reason. Beets are nitrogen collectors, and too much nitrogen makes nitric oxide, and it's bad for your heart and your body. So you'll see people don't eat beets because they have too much nitric oxide or nitrogen. Well, they do if they're non-organic, because they are so desperate for nitrates that when you put that fertilizer on it, they take them all. An organic beet doesn't do that. It doesn't have enough. So they're so efficient at it that when you see something that they want you to buy nitric oxide beets, they're called super beets. It's just a non-organic beet. It's a whole scam right there. The super beet is nothing but organic. I mean, it works if you want nitric oxide, but Ray Pete has show after show about how bad nitric oxide is for us, and how it's supposedly in 92, it was the miracle molecule of the decade, and actually that's what poppers were. Back in the day, people used to take amonitrate and amonitrate and nitrite and this and that and all the different versions of it and have heart attacks and stuff. So now Viagra, they're giving them heart attack pills, basically. It causes a lot of damage. And a lot of people still think that nitric oxide is really good for you. And actually, it's a principal element in LA smog. So I tell people, if I want it, I'll just go down and take some deep breaths down in central LA. Get all the nitric oxide I want.
Wow. Yeah, CO2 is the superior Viagra, right?
It actually works. It's amazing. It's highly anabolic, and there were books written about it for cures of cancer even, and things like that. In Germany, they had so many carbon dioxide spouts coming out of the ground, much like the Yosemite with water, that they actually had public baths that they charged you for, an individual bath, fully clothed. Carbon dioxide penetrates your clothes. So people would just come in their regular street clothes, take off their shoes maybe, get in a private bathtub or get in a public thing, get charged. They ran 24 hours a day. And it was thousands of people went to these baths. And there are books written about all the cures about it. Ray Pete knew about the book when I mentioned this one book, and I sent him a copy of the copy that I had. And he said, thanks. I have that book already, but yours is a little better copy. Carbon dioxide is a miracle cure for a lot of things.
Yeah, that's incredible. So your wild card recipe for your Grow 3 section on your website is the evening bone building soup. And this one was very interesting to me. It's bamboo shoots, ghee, raw ginger, and 1,000-year-old egg. Where does someone get one of those?
Most Oriental or Asian stores will sell them.
Wow.
And I was very hesitant to eat them at one time because they're called ground liver is the other word. And they're not that old. They're usually about 3 years, I think, but they bury them underground and they come out black. And the one day I decided to take them, I came in and said, I'm going to try it tonight. And they looked at each other. Oh, we had just snuck it in your soup. You were going to eat it whether you liked it or not. So I tasted it. It wasn't too bad. And it actually is a fermented egg. And according to O'Donnell Lay, calcium and iron are opposing minerals, even in most foods. But when you ferment an egg, they mate with each other, so to speak. And it becomes an extra healthy form of food. Now, I haven't had a 1,000-year-old egg since the 80s, so I seem to be okay without it. But it is a healthy food, and the Asians know it. Most Asian stores, as I say, sell the fermented eggs.
Yeah, I've only been to San Francisco once. I went up there with my friend David and his family, and I loved the Chinatown, I think it was, and I felt like I could have spent weeks there because I went in a few of those Chinese stores and I was just in heaven. I was like, this is so cool. There's so many interesting things around here.
What I liked it when I managed a health food store here in Carpinteria, I went down there and found out that I could buy ginseng down there at a fraction of the cost that our wholesalers sold it to us. So we sold ginseng underpriced in the other health food stores in town and still made more profit. Yeah, I would get a lot of things down there. They had the best ginseng of all kinds, even in a retail. But when I bought larger amounts, and they gave us wholesale on top of that. Yeah, we were getting ginseng and other Chinese herbs for almost nothing down there and reselling them up here for quite a profit.
Wow. And there's a slight difference, though. I think I have a bunch here between like Korean, there's American, Siberian, right? There's all these different types from different areas, and they have slightly different effects. And
they do. A lot of them argue about red ginseng and white ginseng, which is best. My Korean buddy, he said the red ginseng, some are undercooked, some are cooked. Wild ginseng is actually was grown in the United States first and then sent to China and sent back. And good ginsengs, you can pay, and this is in the 1980s, $25,000 for one wild ginseng root. 25 grand. People would buy it. And it commonly was 10,000 because wild ginseng grows in the dark. And so you can hunt it at night quite easily. Something that they can't get out of a bred ginseng. They can't make it into wild ginseng. Then there's kind of phony ginsengs which still work, like the Russian ginseng, Eleutherio, something like that. That's really not a ginseng, but it works like that. It definitely promotes energy. And then they have one down in South America. The name of the plant escapes me. They're actually calling South American ginseng, and it's not. Oh, the real ginsengs are the red ginseng and the white ginseng, both of the Siberian, even the Korean, and then the other one that comes from Wisconsin, actually, is where it first came from.
Interesting. Well, Adam, let's jump into some Q&A questions because people always send in some good ones.
All right.
Why to avoid melted cheese unless it's dextrinized, and what makes it dextrinized?
Even dextrinization won't really save it once it's melted. Back in the day, there was a column in the paper that answered questions, and someone asked, "I swallow my chewing gum every time I eat it, about 3 times a day. Is that harmful?" And the answer was, "No, Velveeta cheese is 100% indigestible anyway, so what's the difference? Well, melted cheese can actually clog up your colon because if you chew regular cheese, you'll notice it's creamy in your mouth. But if you do melted cheese, you'll notice there's chunk styles. And those chunks actually can get caught in the colon. Now, admittedly, you have to have kind of a squirrely colon. But remember, I told you I did 30-year-olds and they had all these tangles in their colon already. And mine was dropped down where, because my transverse colon hung down so bad, I got good results from being upside down, obviously, because I got stuff that would hang down there for who knows, wouldn't be pushed out of there. So melted cheese, the ketones in our own mouth harden the cheese as we eat it and making it more solid. And I had a friend that was a mad scientist. He had a laboratory. So I see a big can says ketones. What do you use that for? To harden the resin in my plastics. Oh, okay. I guess I learned correctly about the food then. So otherwise, cheese is mostly digestible in most cases. Most people can handle it really readily. But once you heat it beyond a certain point, then it causes a problem. Dextrinization, you do it at a low temperature, and it'll still dissolve in your mouth. What temperature? See, when you get those little lumps that you chew because you bought the thing and you don't want to waste it, and you don't want to spit it out, when those don't appear, then you're good to go. So my story was, one day I had eaten a lot of melted cheese in my life. And when Donald Lay gave me a session one time, he went up and down my spine with one of these things they treat your lungs with in a lung lab. And I went to the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom, and I went to the bathroom. I couldn't get off the toilet. An hour later, I finally said, I have a phone call that I got to get upstairs. I wrapped toilet paper in my butt and didn't make it even up the stairs. I had to sit in the toilet longer with a long phone call into the bathroom. I asked Adano what happened. He said, brother, you were so full of melted cheese, I had to do something. So anyway, it's a very real effect. I ate a lot of it in my time. I paid the price. I don't have any disease from it, but it does clog up your intestines.
Wow. It seems like impossible to avoid when you go out to eat. Like I see it in, if I get street tacos or whatever it is. So I wonder if that's one of the main reasons why someone might want to do apple cider vinegar every day. Because you've said that's something that actually will detoxify it, right?
That and products of the grape. That's why in pizza joints you'll see grape vinegar and wine and grape juice will do just as fine. But any of those grape products tend to clean that out of the colon too. And apple cider vinegar and honey drink, that will actually do so too if you're going to eat that. Most people, again, are going to pass it through, but there always is in the potential of forming what they call a bezoar, Bezoar, and that's a concretion. Many things that we eat start to get layers around it. In fact, a lot of people don't know that the people that die from gallstones don't die because it comes out of the gallbladder. They die because it gets into the small intestine and gradually grows to the size of a baseball and then gets caught at the ileocecal valve and they die. Wow. So that's another reason to keep your colon going 3 times a day so that you get all that residual matter, extra gallstones and things out of your colon when they can still fit through the IC valve and get out into the toilet, then have it grow into a baseball that is almost impossible to dissolve. There are ways to dissolve it, but it takes years.
Wow. This is a really good one. What are the possible causes for an aversion to the color pink? And what would be the best day to wear pink?
Betrayal. Yeah, it's often betrayal. Someone feels betrayed by someone. Usually it's a who that they call it. And best day to wear pink is today, red. Notice I've got red on, so pink is also today. You could also wear it, ideally, in the pink is at 12 midnight at Sunday to Monday at midnight. and by the way,
Very
this
specific.
color thing, the colors, I wear colors, and it seems woo-woo. Red on Monday, orange on Tuesday, yellow on Wednesday, green on Thursday, blue on Friday, violet shades and black on Saturday, and white on Sunday. Now, what is that based on? Absolute craziness? New Age nonsense? No. There's a rhythm called circa septon rhythms. When you get a poison from something like tetanus, if a mouse is bitten by a rabid dog, it dies instantly. Tetanus is a poison. It's not a poison to us. It takes from 6 to 9 days for a human to die of tetanus or to get it and then die afterwards. It turns out that we have two reactions, a stomach reaction to a poison and a feedback mechanism from our own body, like in tetanus and rabies. Same thing. Takes a while. You don't die from it right away. You don't even know you have it. But the optimum circa septum rhythm is 7 days, the perfect immunity. If your immunity is too fast, it kicks in at 6 days. If it's too late, it's 9 days. You get more slack. Same with jet lag. You get more manic if you fly east and less manic if you lengthen your day by flying west. So the same thing happens with circa septum rhythms. Very well researched, and also other people like Emmanuel Ravisi knew about them, and actually has divided all diseases into 7-day diseases or regular diseases. He never calls it circa septum rhythms, but he certainly knew about it. And every immunologist knows about that fact, that our body will attack our cells, our own cells. It's a very real thing when provoked by a certain substance that gets in there and tricks the body. But the circa septum rhythm, in other words, by putting yourself in color flow, on the SunSync site, we actually have a video where you can do it, but you can say the colors. You can just say black, gray, brown, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, and white, and clear your brain just like that. We just cleared everybody listening to the show. It's you don't even have to visualize the colors, but it does help to think of those colors as you do it, or to wear it on a weekly basis, or even those colors we go through a reaction of them during the day. We go through white from 3 to 6 in the morning, red from 6 to 9, orange from 9 to 12, and so forth, till you end up in violet. And here's a funny thing. Colors aren't linear. How did we get from violet and we go one more time zone and we're into red? It's a strange phenomenon. And that's why it's a color wheel. It's not linear. Same with the clock. The old clock showed that it was a circle. It wasn't linear. We've actually distorted our sense of time by getting rid of that old clock face that showed that you got back to the starting point every day in revolutions. Same with color. You get color revolutions, and they're just a little below the timing, but both are relevant to our health. Pink is betrayal anyway.
Isn't it funny? That was great. Isn't it funny that we could just look up at the sky sometimes and it just shows us right there with the rainbow, the order?
It is. And then you get a reverse rainbow again in the next one, too. By the way, I'm going to tell a personal story on myself that shows how powerful the colors can be, and with the color pink. I won't identify the person involved, but I was in a relationship with somebody, and we had broke up, and then we got back together. And anyway, when I got back to Houston, Texas, she said, I'm pregnant. Uh-oh. So anyway, I said, well, she was a feminist, and so she said, I'm going to take care of the baby. I said, no, I'm the father, so I'm at least partly responsible. I want to contribute to the child. Anyway, I go for a colonic at Adonale's residence. And on the way, I buy the colonic therapist a pink teddy bear, pink and orange teddy bear. And I said, wow, pink and orange are coming in strong. What's going on? So then I went to get the colonic, and the therapist knew color and said, what color do you think of? Because I was having cramps. Pink and orange. Well, those are the colors, interesting enough, for sexual betrayal. Sex is orange, pink is betrayal. You put them together, you get combinations. So anyway, I come out from the colonic, and my girlfriend is there. And she asked Adonale, can you tell if a person's pregnant? He said, yeah. Step forward. Put out both your arms. She did. You're pregnant. Okay, she sat down. Can you tell when the pregnancy occurred? He said, yes. Pick a number from 1 to 10. 3. It happened 3 weeks ago. And I realized, that's the time that we got together. So then he said, but let me check it out on my biorhythm computer. So he goes in his storeroom, comes out with his therapy room, comes out with it, says, what's your birth date? Punches it in and said, yep, you're definitely pregnant. And then he says, who's the father? Of course, I'm hiding in the corner. He is. Okay. Without missing a beat, what's your birthday? Punches it in, turns around to her and said, he can't possibly be the father. And I'm like, what? And she said, I have something to tell you. When she left me, she had sex with someone else. Anyway, long story short, I dreamed she lost the baby. And she did that very morning. That I had that dream while I was traveling with Adonal. In fact, while I was traveling with Adonal, I said, I still could be the father. There were 2 of us. And Adonal said, I'm telling you, you're not the father. And he wouldn't talk to me for about 100 miles down the road. He was so mad. But then I dreamed she had a spontaneous abortion. And she did at the same time, probably that I was dreaming it. Weird stories. Anyway, pink and orange. That was the point.
Wow. With Adana looking at the biorhythm calculator, if it's the same thing, I had a show on it. Is that where you have your physical, emotional, and intellectual rhythm?
Yep. He had 7. Complicated.
Wow.
By the way, I drove cab in Boston a long time ago, and they asked for our information and recommended we don't drive on our bad biorhythm days. The cab company was owned by the mafia, too. That's the real humor of it. So the mafia in Boston was into circadian rhythm, into biorhythms, a little different story. There are some problems with biorhythms, but they do have a grain of truth behind them that were investigated by the railroad, actually wanted to know about how biorhythms work for their employees. So there is, though it's overblown, there is some real research behind it.
Yeah. Whenever I'm having an off day, I look at it, and it seems to be accurate most of the time.
I used to sell biorhythm computers at one time. The thing, I had one myself until it ran out in 2000, so it's been a while back. But I noticed a different pattern, and the pattern would be, I wondered about this, and what Adamo told me is that when you get to the bottom, that's not a problem. The problem is like if you're in a car and now you have to switch upstream. So often it happens the day after on the low. Then I read about that in the biorhythm book, and that seems to be the truth. Every time I come to the bottom of a hill now in my car and start to go up, I think about that story. There's some validity to it, though. I have noticed my day, Friday night, I used to really try to stay away from any kind of trouble because it was my vulnerable night. Particularly, Adonale said, particularly the physical rhythm is harder to beat. You have to do something physical. The emotional and the psychological, you can clear your brain of that and yawn and fart and scream and yell and everything like that. And you can beat those rhythms. But the physical one, he says, is like a lightning rod. It's you can put it out there and diffuse it. But the physical one's more like a bulldozer coming at your house. And so you have to just be aware, stay out of the way at that time, rather than try to emote your way out of it.
Wow, that's really interesting. This is a good one. Can you eat fruit at night? And if so, which ones? Pineapple's one, right?
Okay. I can name 3. Cactus pear, pineapple, and dragon fruit. They're all nice. Dragon fruit, delicious, by the way. And here's why. The rule, again, was tree, bush, and vine, and root. Well, how come a cactus can grow tall? And so a dragon fruit's on like a saguaro. Well, there's a problem here. Not everything follows the sun, but some plants avoid the sun. What would happen to a cactus plant if it's 125 degrees in Death Valley and it opens up to bloom? It's going to roast. It's going to be cooked. So it delays its function in a 4-part photosynthesis system instead of a 3-part. It's called C4 metabolism. And certain other foods like corn does it, but it doesn't change its time. The bromeliad family, pineapple, actually the pineapples grow on the ground, but furthermore, the bromeliad family does the same thing. The heat and the excess moisture would damage it, so it waits till nighttime to finish off the photosynthesis. A desert dweller will tell you that a cactus, both in the flesh of it, the pulp, as well as the fruit, will taste differently right after the sunset compared to the bitter taste that will accumulate overnight. So the process is going on at that time. That's why all of your cactus products and your bromeliads have kind of a 2-pronged thing. Nighttime is best, but you can actually eat them before dawn. If you get hungry just before you eat, have a cactus product or a bromeliad product. Aloe, that's a bromeliad. Cactus pear. There's a whole bunch of tequila. Tequila is actually a cactus product. That's why you drink tequila at night. So they're kind of exceptions to the rule. And during lunar time, of course, you can scramble it up and eat your apples and things. By the way, apple is kind of looser when it comes to timing. So if you really get hungry at night and you really need a fruit, a sweet apple will be okay. The bitter apples, I agree with Ray Pete on that. They're more of a problem. The pectin in them actually is not the benefit that they tell you it is. The sweeter the apple, the better you are.
Wow, interesting.
And of
this is
course,
kind of on the same track.
You get to eat the apple, right?
Yeah. What are the best post-dinner desserts and snacks?
Let's see. What do I used to like, until they ruined it, there used to be some kind of a powdered ginger you would get, and they started doing something to it, but I would often do that. And the pineapple, I would eat the rings of pineapple, even canned ones back in the day. And now sometimes I take pineapple juice from Lakewood, half and half with sugar, and eat it as a dessert. And my eyeballs roll back in my head. It tastes so good. What else did I eat? I think that was mostly pineapple was one of my favorite nighttime ones. I have eaten, I used to be able to get cactus chutney. Oh boy, was that good. Cactus chutney. A friend of mine in Tucson made it. And we used to have chutneys available from a solar nutrition guy named Dr. Dada Gupta who won the U.S. Science Award presented to him by the first President Bush. He did a lot of research validating solar nutrition and made sprouted tofu made chutneys, pumpkin chutney, golly, every chutney for every time of the day we had. My favorite was sweet potato chutney and pumpkin chutney were my two favorites. But I ate a lot of other ones too.
Wow. You never got into Haagen-Dazs and ice cream?
Yeah, midday, except for lunar. We would call it, we would loon out with Haagen-Dazs. I haven't eaten Haagen-Dazs in a long time, but yeah, it's mostly a midday food. My own son was having problems. He told me he eats a quart of ice cream, Haagen-Dazs a day or whatever ice cream it was. And he started having a little wide in the face. And I heard that defined as ice cream face. So I told him about that and said, eat it at the middle of the day instead of at night. He did, and he didn't have ice cream face anymore. So it really does make a difference. But at lunar time, we ate it at night anyway.
I thought it was a neutral food because it's dairy. But
not really, but if you have a small amount. See, dairy is looser. The more fat you have in it, the more it's time-free. Cream, no problem. Ghee, all butter, oil, nothing problem there. Butter, pretty much all the time too. What else? The more fat, half and half, you get by with more. But you just don't do too much of the dairy because a lot of people who have trouble with dairy, like I met someone who lived at one of those, what do they call them, 3HO ashrams, the Sikh ashrams. And she said her baby had terrible reaction to milk where she was mucus all over the place. And that's all they served her at the ashram. So I said, can you get access to cashews? She said, yeah. Make cashew milk in the morning, drink all your milk that you're going to give the baby from cow milk, give them in the middle of the day. And I forgot what I told her to take at night, something related to it. She came back a week later, said no more mucus. So she had just as much milk. She just timed it from 12 noon to 7 o'clock and then did a little cashew milk for breakfast. And that took care of the whole problem.
What? It's funny, Adam, when you said half and half. Dave Asprey, the former Bulletproof guy, he sold it, but he's been making Q&A videos where people ask him questions and he just gives a 30-second answer. In a recent question last week, someone asked him if they can put a tablespoon of half and half in their coffee. Is that healthy? And he said absolutely no, because the half and half will bind to the polyphenols in the coffee and prevent their absorption. It was fascinating. It's really interesting. So I'm like, what's the difference between that and putting butter?
The polyphenols are tannins, so he's partially right. But the little that happens is not going to stop the effect of the coffee's benefits. You won't get it. And if it was a problem, have another cup of coffee.
That's
Can't
great.
get it. There's no way that much cream or half and half can possibly take care of all of those polyphenols because tea is loaded with it, coffee is loaded with it. A lot of things got the phenols in them. Some of them aren't even beneficial to us, but most of them are beneficial, particularly if you eat them on time and don't make a habit of taking enormous amounts of them, which actually are often toxic.
Yeah. This is a good one. Does he soak all of his nuts or just almonds?
No, just the almonds are the ones that changes. The others, some people do well by soaking the other nuts. I don't like the flavor actually, but with almonds, from 6 hours to 12 hours, you convert the prussic acid in an almond to actually, what did they used to call it? Golly, I'm thinking of the term, the anti-cancer ingredient that they used to sell. That's it. Yeah, thanks for saving me on that one. It changes it to amygdalin. But then, if you let it go for 3 days, you get a reaction where it turns into whatever the acid is that's in cranberries, not necessarily harmful, but the fermentation irritates your stomach in the morning. As a general rule, except for umi plums and a few exceptions, better to avoid the fermented foods, particularly in the morning. But its active time is from 6 to 72 hours. Now, Adano, and don't ask me to explain this, he said at 72 hours you get the tanic square root reaction. God only knows what that is. But anyway, 6 hours is enough to actually make that initial change into amygdalin, and then it goes into just breaks down into simple chemicals, and that one acid that will go into your bladder. Actually, it's used in cranberry juice because it's non-volatile, so it can't acidify your bladder when you get an alkaline infection. Most infections are alkaline, so take note, people who are believing in an alkaline diet. We need them both. We need them both.
Right. This is a good one. How does vitamin E, tocotrienols, neutralize tocopherols? I must have missed that post because I haven't heard that.
Yeah, tocotrienols, when you think about it, is a scam. Tocopherols, the four of them, the alpha, the beta, the gamma, the delta, all of those are very, very, if there ever was a miracle supplement, it's vitamin E, no doubt about it. But then they tried to pass off tocotrienols. And I suspected a rat right away. And Ray Pete has commented, yeah, they're actually counterproductive. I forget what he recently said when he was asked about that it causes some kind of a disease if you take enough of them. But stands to reason. Every plant, almost without exception, has tocopherols in it. There's only rice, palm, and a couple other things that have tocotrienols in it. So it's like you ever see, I'm not going to name any products, but there was a product. This is necessary for everybody in the world, but it's only found on the top of Mount Fuji. Well, if it's for how did everybody in the world survive unless you were a Chinese peasant living at the top, a Japanese peasant on top of Mount Fuji? So it's the same thing. If it's so rare, how come people are getting along fine? But tocopherols are so important that they're used all over the world in all the plants, and they help you. And Dirk Pearson, in his book Life Extension, which makes some inaccurate statements, but he was really big on vitamin E and how important it was. And his only mistake were the dried forms and things. I asked Ray Pete about on one of his radio shows, and he said, no, you go for the regular vitamin E and don't get into the fancy forms of it, that it's the best. Mm-hmm. I believe you sell a mixed tocopherol thing, which is right on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's as good as it gets. Supposedly, Ray Pete said vitamin E used to be different, like more potent or something, and that's always fascinated me. But yeah, there's this doctor going around making the rounds on podcasts selling a tocotrienol supplement, and it just doesn't make sense to me. They're unsaturated, whereas tocopherols are saturated. So that right there is a clue.
Yeah. It's someone figured they could get something exotic and then sell it for the real thing. But of course, the Schutz did all that research about how heart healthy vitamin E was. And though it's been changed, it's still beneficial like it is. Also, if you want it in food, almonds are a great source of vitamin E in the morning. And so is olives. Olives and olive oil, great source of vitamin E. But it's in plants. On the diet people eat, that's one thing I have actually supplemented on sometimes, because if I figure, especially you're on the road or something like that, then it's hard to get the good food for it. So it is one of the best supplements out there out of anything you can get.
Yeah, and it helps too to sometimes break the rules, right? And if I don't have my vitamin E for whatever reason and I'm eating junk food or fast food, which is very rare nowadays, but I think you feel the difference if you if you mitigate it versus just trying to use your mind power. I think both have their place though.
Yeah, well, mind power, I met a guy named Jerry Burks, and he was really big into mind power, and he could do it. So he got cancer. I told him, he came to me for advice, and I gave him a bunch of things to do. I didn't know as much as I know then, but I told him what I did. Years later, maybe a decade or two, I ran into him in Tucson, Arizona. And he told me, by the way, I got rid of cancer with mind power, but it would have been easier if I followed your method along with it. So the mind is very powerful. And Jerry Burks was a very, very unusual guy who definitely had mental powers.
Yeah, maybe our next show, I think we've been talking about it for like 2 or 3 shows. We need to do a whole one on mesmerism because I have no clue about it. So I'd love to learn.
Well, I believed the same thing until recently, that hypnotism and mesmerism was the same thing, and mesmerism was just a false amount. But actually, mesmerism's closest approximation in our society is applied kinesiology and biokinesiology in those various forms, so-called muscle testing. Do you know that the police, one time I was talking about kinesiology, and I had a Texas Highway Patrolman that my friend was dating. And so I thought I'd impress him with a little kinesiology. I said, can I show you something? He said, can I show you some things? I said, what? So then he got up and did the up and down the meridians and everything like that, and told me that you can also, if you ask a person for an address, if they go above 2 digits, it weakens them and all this stuff he's telling me. I said, where did you learn that? We're taught it. Every highway patrolman in Texas is taught it. It's called control techniques. So he knew about all this woo-woo stuff. He said he would come to when he would go to approach somebody, he would say, could I see your driver's license, please? And because we're on audio, but I put my hand downward just casually, and automatically, some people are more susceptible. Some people, I used to amaze people because you can try this. Put your arm up. This guy was a muscle guy, really proud. I said, put your arm up. I could practically hang on his arm. He was so strong. I went down the central meridian, pushed him right down. He went, do that again.
Wow.
Do that again. He just couldn't believe that me doing that would work. And most people, wow, unless you know certain tricks of centering, and most people who think they can center themselves can't, that's the proof. If you find someone that can center themselves, they know. I've had a lot of Qigong people, didn't work, but there are some people who really know the tricks on that. And it can be done at a distance. That's what the police don't know, that you can do it 1,000 miles away.
Wow.
Now, we're getting into the realm of voodoo at that point, but these energies exist. Rupert Sheldrake is probably the only real legitimate mainstream scientist, sort of mainstream, that writes about it, but it's very real things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting with the police and the highway patrolmen. I always think of Star Wars and, the Jedi, because last year I got pulled over. I went to an Italian restaurant and had a bunch of pasta and a big glass of red wine. And I was driving home and I was, fine. I wasn't drunk. It's just a glass of wine. And it was after, a couple hours. And I got pulled over for speeding because there was like an abrupt slowdown after you get off the ramp, which doesn't really make sense. But and the guy comes to my window and he's like, "Do you do any drinking today?" And I'm like, "Nope." And he's like, "So if I breathalyze you, you won't, pop it?" I was like, "Nope." It was like a interesting mental little like game going on, where I have to bluff, and such an interesting aspect of life. But yeah, I would never drive drunk.
I've had good police.
Just a little disclaimer. No.
They do have definitely games going on. My karma's been really good. I've back when I drank, I had 2 bottles of wine and decided that my car was overheating, so I was going to blow it up. I'm obviously in the wrong mood, but I welded it together. Talk about good karma there. I cured the car after a year of having to put water in it every 5 miles. I had jugs in the back constantly to pour water into it. It sealed itself. Then I picked up a hitchhiker, and I'm drunk. And he tells me he makes his living by beating people over the head and stealing their wallets. I said, well, that's okay. I don't have any wallet. I don't have any money. So we drove up someplace, and finally I passed out. We pulled over beside, I passed out. A cop comes and knocks on the window and said, have you been drinking? I said, no. He said, what are those 2 wine bottles doing on the door? And my breath obviously did it. So I said, oh, I just left him there from, where's your registration? I had cleaned my car and didn't have the registration. So anyway, what he says, I think, oh, we're going to jail. And the guy beside me thinks he's going to jail too. The cop says, go up the road. There's a mile, get a coffee, and then go to a motel, and leaves.
Wow.
So at that point, I told my passenger who was a full-blooded Indian, I'm out of gas. I don't have any money to go where we're going. He wanted to go to Oklahoma. I said, well, I have relatives in Weatherford, Texas. They can put us up there. So I had enough gas to get there, and I spent Thanksgiving with the Indians in Weatherford, Texas.
Yep. The whole driving under the influence thing is so interesting to me. Because I feel like it's a law that should be there, and I'm sure people get so triggered because they've had, people have had families torn apart by getting, someone's killed by a drunk driver. But I feel like it's probably the health of the person, the health of their liver. I know, for example, me, like my nervous system, if I stay up all night long, I actually can function pretty well, and I could drive, and I don't hallucinate so as much. But someone's blowing you guys up.
We're just.
But yeah, I was just saying.
I got a couple of phone calls, but Vibrant Gal just unplugged it, so you won't hear it anymore.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's funny. Anyway, my point is, I think there's a nervous system component to how we handle things like that, and most people are probably not healthy, and so they lose motor function completely when they consume alcohol. That's my theory anyway. But
trauma can do that, because someone under alcohol, if they're not traumatized, can drive perfectly well. Wow. Most people have accidents of what's called proprioception, where you bump into walls and things like that is a proprioception problem, and they can be solved by behavioral optometry. Now they have a thing called what is it called? I can't even think of the name that they do in Canada. They teach this to kids, and it's basically exercises that you do. But the parent science is behavioral optometry, where you do exercises like this. Say you bump into walls. You simply take your fingers and you, with each hand, you do a figure, both hands together, you do a figure 8 around a point in the wall, like a nail hung up in the wall or a hole or something, and do that over and over, and then draw figure 8s with each hand, and automatically your scores go up when you take tests. Your proprioception improves. Oh. In fact, I first found a friend of mine, a really dear friend of mine, had a child that was a D student. So she told me anything you can do. And I did the exercise where you take your finger in front of the person's eyes. And if the eyes go click, 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 back and forth instead of smoothly, they have a problem processing one information from one hemisphere to the other and back again. It affects your tennis stroke. It affects your lifting barbells, all kinds of things. So I said, you've got the money, so you don't have to do whatever they call the other process. You have enough money to go see a behavioral optometrist. She did. They give them all kinds of eye exercise, a red lens, a green lens, and you see the writing where you see some and not the others. You have to train yourself to see both. At the end of that, she became an A student in the 10th grade, the 11th grade, the 12th grade, and through college. Straight A's after that from a D and threats of failing school. I learned that trick from an optometrist who studied it back in the day and was hired by the Army, like in that movie with Danny DeVito, where they take the people who are not passing the test. But instead of giving them tests and being a teacher, he gave them eye exercises, and they all passed. So doing those kind of techniques, actually, they worked dramatically.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, before I got LASIK eye surgery, I was trying the pinhole glasses and the figure eights, and I wasn't seeing an improvement, but maybe it was my nutrition being off. I don't know.
They can help. My sight came back dramatically after 23 years of needing glasses. Suddenly my sight restored in 2009.
Wow.
One day I couldn't even read a newspaper before without my glasses or go to a bookstore. So one morning I come down and I look at the newspaper, start reading it, and think, wow, I don't have my glasses on. And so it got fixed. It's getting a little less now, but I don't have to go out before. If I didn't bring my glasses, I was functionally blind for reading labels, books, newspapers, and a lot of small signs, even menus in restaurants. And now I can do all of that. But why it changed? I
Wow.
did eat. There's a dietary thing in solar nutrition. You have pistachios in the morning. You notice how they have visual violet in them, in the color of them, and they look like eyes peeping to the sun. And then sunflower seeds, which they follow the sun, and then carrots at night. And that could have done it. It did it dramatically for a guy who came into the health food store one time and said, I've got a chance to get a job, but I can't wear glasses for this job, and I'm not going to pass the eye test. Have you got anything? I told him about those 3 foods. He ate it for a week, and I wasn't there, but he came into the health food store and told the guy I work with, tell him that it worked fine. I got the job. So you can improve your eyes.
Wow.
And by the way, for cataracts, Ray Peat has said that you can reverse cataracts. It's the same as any other tissue. They make you think that it's a separate lens from your body and it's not organic. He said it's like egg white. You ever see when you heat egg white up, it gets dark? He said, well, you can actually reverse that by getting the flow back in there. And it's not blood flow, it's glutamine. And basically, if you had capillaries in your eye, you'd have to look through all the blood. So it obviously has to have a way of oxygenating yourself, like Ray Peat talks about the fish in Mexico that you can read the newspaper through. I don't know if you've heard him talk about that. The diamond body, basically it is. There actually have been transparent human beings, at least according to Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Wow. That's funny. Well, I wonder if it works both ways with healing your body to restore your eyesight and your brain. Because after I got laser eye surgery, my brain function went through the roof. Like, definitely my memory improved, my ability to focus, to concentrate. Like, my overall brain function improved when I improved my eyesight in that way. It's really interesting, the connection.
They're definitely tied in. Have you ever seen the little homunculus in the head, which has the big lips, the big eyes, and the big hands, but the smaller feet and all of that? That's a very real thing, and it's a reflex system. Well, obviously, your eyes have a lot to do with our consciousness. Probably 80% of our consciousness is visual, 18% is audible, and we only have a miserable 3% for touch, for odor, and for taste. 3%. So a balanced person used to mean, let's see, rationality had to do with ratio of those 5 elements. The very word ratio, it comes from your intelligence is super intelligent when you have touch 20%, eyesight 20%, etc. But you can focus on those and actually adjust them to become what they call a genius or a savant. Obviously, genius is different than we think. The guy in Denver, he's just a regular guy. He jumps off into a swimming pool. It's empty, smashes his head, wakes up. He can now do mathematical formulas and all kinds of complicated things. Another guy, some downtown town, I forget which, gets mugged and beaten senseless, wakes up 5 days later. He's now a genius. So obviously, you didn't get that out of a book. Idiot savants was the politically incorrect name of calling it back in the day.
I love it. Well, Adam, this was a great breakdown of SunSync nutrition or solar nutrition, and I'm sure people can get bits and pieces from all the chats that we've done. But this was really cool. I'm glad we did a dedicated show on it, and I hope more people sign up to sunsyncnutrition.com. Oops, sorry, that's my mistake. Because they get access to a lot of cool things. Like they can ask you questions. I mean, my favorite part is the food list because it just makes it really easy to click through. And like I said, there's those fun recipes or drinks that you can make, and tons of cool stuff. You have the color recycling, right? And a lot of things on there.
Yep. Sunsyncnutrition.com and sign up for $99, get all kinds of things. And then also I sell my books at solartiming.com. So they can get books there. I've got about 40 or 50 of them now. And I was not going to write another book, but here I am writing a copper book, so I couldn't help myself. I already had so many notes on it that I figured this is going to be easy because 2/3 of it is written already. In fact, I wrote a book called what was it called? Cosmochemistry. I got that from the oil industry. It's actually a word they know about because they want to go get oil out of Jupiter and Mars and asteroids and everything. So I borrowed that name and I went into all of these minerals. Some of them are in my Butterflies Need No Taxidermist book. And I started writing books on each one, but it faltered and I have bits and pieces of probably about 20 unwritten books that are more that are just lying around that I find every once in a while where I've gotten like 1/3 through it, even 3/4 through it, and some of them just starting. Yeah, and he mounted his horse and rode off in all directions.
Well, I just noticed too, you have a bibliography of books related to SunSync science and some wild ones that look so cool, like why do music conductors live into their 90s? I just got crystal singing bowls, which it's amazing. I had a guy come here that fell and hit his head and had crazy nerve pain, and just 5 minutes of me playing a singing bowl, he said it was 100% reduction in pain. Like it was an anesthetic. It's wild what sound can do.
It makes a difference. I have a friend named Dr. Raymond Solis. He's an MD. And when people will do it, he takes them into the room with the Tibetan bowls. He works on them with the Tibetan bowls. Yeah, Doc out of the box is what they call him. He's also a student of Master Chen and a good friend of mine.
That's so cool. Wow. I love it. Yeah, and solartiming.com. So the two websites, I'll put the links below. And yeah, it's always fun, Adam. It always lights me up. And every time we chat, I always have something new to try. I think I have to go pick up some walnut hulls to integrate that in my morning routine.
Yeah, they're good for cleansing. If you do that cleanse, it's good to have a whole month of doing that, because from moon to moon, you'll notice parasites follow that type of. They follow the moon. It's really common. And the eggs are a monthly process often, or at least they last a month. So within a month, you kill all the eggs. So that's the whole idea of doing it a long time. Otherwise, you can get rid of a parasite, then another egg hatches, or another, whatever they call it. It's basically like a cocoon, you know. I've seen those in my friend the leather tiger's colon. They look like big cotton balls. It freaked him out.
Wow.
He said, "What the heck? I didn't eat cotton balls, a whole bunch of them." And I've seen photos and parasite things of how they have little nests like that some of them are in. The only way you truly know about the parasites is one of those parasite tests that you get. But indeed, a lot of people have things in their guts that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, I know. And there's so many options. Like, I know Justin has the turpentine lady a lot. I've done that before, but I've been messing with ivermectin, putting 1% ivermectin liquid in capsules, just doing following the instructions for animals on the label. And you look at like the one I just gave my goats today, all the worms, it wipes out pinworms and Ascaris lumbricoides, roundworms. And it's a lot of worms that just ivermectin. It's funny, people are using it for the C thing, but it's a better anti-parasitic,
A lot of the other things they were using for the so-called pandemic, I didn't really like because they have a lot of side effects they don't tell you about. But I can't find any real side effects out of ivermectin. So obviously it works on animals and it seems to work. So I have no problem with that. Some of the other ones that I can't pronounce, I've forgotten the names. Vibrant Gal is always telling me how to pronounce them. But no, not remdesivir. I'm talking about the natural ones.
It's in like quercetin, right?
And those. Yeah, they have not only lots of side effects, but by overusing it, it's going to make an outbreak of malaria in the world. So even quercetin and stuff, they're not my favorite chemicals, and they're in poison manuals. But ivermectin, I went to look that up, and I just can't find any dirt on it. So I don't see any reason why it's going to harm anybody that I can see. I'll look some more, but it seems like a wise choice. And even it will probably work better for parasites than going through all that stuff with the pumpkin seeds and everything. It might even be better. So good choice.
Yeah. I think some of the pharmaceuticals too, like there's febendazole and mebendazole. Those are like anti-helmintics, parasite drugs. And there's some research, like I have one right here, mebendazole, and this kills tapeworms in 3 days. It like starves them, reduces the numbers of tumors by 56% as a single agent. So it's actually an anti-cancer thing, this anti-parasite pharmaceutical. And a lot of them seem to be that way. It's interesting.
By the way, I heard something a long time ago that I thought was fiction, but it's true. If you fast and don't take anything, but take a lot of garlic and things that tapeworms don't like, and then you put a bowl, and you get naked, you lie down on the floor and you put a bowl of warm milk on your anus, the tapeworm will crawl out to get the warm milk. I really thought that was fiction when I heard it back in the 70s. It's true. I don't know if I recommend it or not, because I was also told, don't put the warm milk by your mouth, because the tapeworm will try to come out your mouth. Now, I don't know how they get through the pyloric valve and stuff like that. That's true. But the other is true. They will come out.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, a guy, my friend in Hawaii that's really into parasite cleansing, he texted me yesterday and he said he's been doing chlorine dioxin enemas, like 6 drops. I'm like, that sounds scary. I would be afraid to do that.
I would opt out on that one too. Chlorine in our water is bad enough. So I'm not a big fan of that one. I would take the ivermectin 100 times over that choice. Yeah, it's kind of like
the MMS.
Chlorine is okay in water, but the reason they take it out of pools and stuff like that in smaller amounts is because it's chlorine gas. They used to use it in the First World War to kill people. This is related. Chlorine, fluorine, and even iodine and bromine they're toxic metals when they're overdone. Ray Pete's one of the few people that warns about the danger of iodine. I ended up writing a book about it, about how it leads to thyroid cancer, all kinds of things. Yeah, that part, the fluorine and the chlorine and the bromine and the iodine, they're very, very active, and you have to be very careful. They can be used for certain therapies. One of the problems now, 25% of our drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, they're fluorinated. They have fluorine to carry them deeper into your body. Now, why do they call it fluorinated instead of fluoridated? So you can't look it up on the internet, of course. If you do a search, if you put fluoridated drugs, it's not going to give you. Put fluorinated, you'll be in for a big surprise. Cagey, aren't they?
I hope in your... It seems like a lot of these elements are anti-pathogenic. Like I'm interviewing a copper expert here in a week or two, and he's into supplementing like copper sulfate. But I guess copper alone is really anti-parasitic. So it's fascinating.
Oh yeah, it kills one-celled instruments, but it also causes ROS. And actually, copper, just like iron and just like manganese, is involved in Alzheimer's disease. So you have to be careful. Now, why is it active? Why does it do that? Omega-3 fatty acids. Copper behaves, iron behaves, manganese behaves, aluminum behaves if you don't have a matrix for it to feed on. And it's a major villain. When I first started writing books about omega-3s, I never realized it was that wide a subject. It covered so much ground that I really could write some more books on it. But I'm dedicated not to write any more books. The last one I got tricked. Remember when you were being interviewed on Justin's show, and he incorrectly gave me an extra book that I'd written? That's how I wrote the book. I said, well, might as well fulfill his words.
Yeah, I need to finish my first little ebook on calcification, lipofuscin, fibrosis, because it's just I'm on the fibrosis part, which is the hardest one to write about. But the calcification one, I spent so much time on vitamin D because I didn't know that for years, that vitamin D contributes to it.
Yeah, it does, and that was common information that if you take over 200 international units of vitamin D, you pull calcium out of the bones. Now, the thing is, as I just wrote a blog about vitamin D. In fact, Pam Popper is one of the few people who has done about 15 videos on YouTube about how bad vitamin D is in supplement form. I know somebody taking 50,000 IU on a regular basis, and her blood hasn't changed at all, but it goes into the fat cells. And submariners knew that we were designed to go an entire winter without vitamin D, because if you got it during the summer, it's stored in the fat cells. Why are they measuring it in the blood when it's not in the blood? It's a fat-soluble vitamin. It's in the fat. It's not in the blood. But it can be delivered in the blood if they measured the blood without taking any. If you were out in the sun or exposed your food to the sun, which any food, even pasta, will absorb vitamin D into it. But only that, there are a lot of there's a vitamin D2, D3, D4, and other Ds. You don't get that with one frequency like they make it, because they just make it by shining an ultraviolet light on it. But if you're out in the sun and put your food in there, you get a variety. I call it full spectrum D, and it's not toxic because your body can recognize how it's done. Many of the vitamin Ds, they basically weaponize the vitamin D in a lot of those foods, and they cause all kinds of side effects. Anyway, that's my story, and I'm sticking to
it. I get attacked aggressively when I speak out against supplementing D3. People, it's like a religion. And I want to ask you really quick, like, you wouldn't want to put potatoes out in the sun, right? Because the solanine, like, there are a few foods you might not want to do that with, like potatoes.
Here's the trick. Yes, you can put them out there, but here's the trick. People have asked me, okay, if I expose, olive oil is supposed to be in a brown bottle, right? But here's the thing. You take your olive oil that you buy, and if you could pour it out so it could be exposed to sunlight, you expose it for 20 minutes. 20 minutes. It will be so loaded with vitamin D, you put it back in the brown bottle, cork it, that vitamin E will not have gone down a fraction in 10 months in that olive oil bottle.
Wow.
10 months. But if you leave that olive oil in the sun 24 hours, all the vitamin D will be gone, the oil will be rancid, and the green color will be clear. It will lose all of its activity. Plants know that they can just take a certain amount of sun, and that darkness contributes to vitamin E as well as the light. And so and it has a shelf life. Any food, even pasta, you can't imagine which one. Some of them load up with vitamin D in 3 minutes. Some of them take 40 minutes.
Wow.
The average is 20. Put it out the sun 20, 30, 40 minutes. When you do the olive oil, you can keep it out there, even though that just takes 20 minutes. You could keep it out 40 minutes. You wouldn't lose any. You don't start losing it till 1 hour. Then you start losing some of the vitamin D from it. So in other words, we can activate our food by simply putting it out for short periods of time, and you get the real stuff. What makes, if it has a shelf life, what makes something in a pill last for a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years? People should ask. Because it's not vitamin D. It's something else concocted by laboratory beaker boys, I call them. Yeah.
Wow. And yeah, back when I was selling. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, back when I was selling algae oil, I was repping Martin Marietta and NASA. I was really into Myron glass. It's made out of cobalt. And I think at that time I was putting my Mitolife algae oil in like a pyramid in a sun. It's in the sun at solar noon. And my idea was, I kind of extrapolated from Jack Cruse's teachings and kind of made up my own thing. I was like, oh, if it's going through the Myron glass and it's only allowing in the infrared and certain wavelengths of UV, it's probably charging up the DHA. But I was definitely on the wrong track back then.
Yeah, the sun can charge a lot of things up in short amounts. And that's why if you want a bad crop, expose it to light 24 hours a day. It harms it. But you can lengthen it off season a couple of hours and get more growth out of it and speed up its growth by doing those type of tricks. A lot of people know that, who are attempting to grow food in our lab. Some of them will grow laboratory natural food inside, and some of that is okay. You just have to be careful because separating the wheat from the chaff is something else, because you don't know what they're up to or what they're adding to it and how much GMOs and nanotechnology and whatever else they're adding to it. But the technique, we could, in a perfect world, actually grow food in a laboratory, getting the exact frequencies, the time limits of exposure and darkness, and work it. And red, a lot of plants treat that like night. So you could actually still have it lit up with red, but use the other lights for other things. Anyway, there's a whole science that is barely investigated because basically there's no money in it, and it's cheaper to put drugs in things to make things last forever and say it's the same thing as you're getting as a natural product, which is, of course, a total lie.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm looking out my window here, Adam, and I'm going to have to chainsaw a lot of these tall trees, because not only are they blocking my solar panels, but they reduce the amount of sun hitting this area. And I'm really excited to experiment. I might even grow some tobacco again.
I helped chainsaw some trees up there in Idaho at my friend's place. But you be careful that it goes the right way. Make sure you know what you're doing there. We almost went through the roof one time.
Well,
and
it's funny.
One of us doing it almost got killed by a tree fall. When they hit the ground, we heard someone else doing it 3 miles away, and you could hear that the ground would shake where we would be when one of those trees fell.
Wow.
Yeah. So be
You know,
careful.
I posted about that, and some like environmentalists, I don't know if they're vegan, they just don't get it. And they were like, no, we need trees for oxygen. And then I had a bunch of friends send me articles on how most of our oxygen comes from the ocean. I think it was like 80%. And then I made the point that you only need 5 to 10 acres to have wood for life. So you only need that much land because trees grow super fast. I don't think people know how fast they grow. It's insane.
They do. My friend up there, he just cleared an area for his use. He keeps the others. In fact, when he bought that land, the guy said, "I'll sell it to you if you promise not to sell it to the logging companies and things." So he has extensive area, but because those trees were all by his house, one could fall off and kill the roof. So we got rid of some of about 15, 20 trees around the area that he was going to build a photo lab and some of the other stuff they use, a bathhouse, that kind of thing. But nice country up there. I loved it when I was visiting them.
Yeah, you're always welcome if you guys are up here.
Thank you.
But pretty cool setup. A lot of energy devices I'm playing with and just trying to make it like a futuristic hospital.
That's cool.
But thanks, Adam. This was awesome. And we'll do it again soon.
You bet. You bet. Thanks so much, Matt. Have a great evening.
Yeah.
Enjoy your potato.
Thank you. Yes. Appreciate it. Stick around as I close out the show here. Well, I forgot to remind you to have your notepad ready to take notes. But that's probably only if you're new to the show. The veterans probably already know to be ready to take notes. Adam is such a wealth of wisdom, and how he's living is obviously working with the capacity of his memory and his articulation. It's really impressive, and I hope to be even half at his level when I get to that chronological age. I found his parasite protocol really fascinating. The walnut hulls in the morning, the pumpkin seeds midday, and the tequila at circulation sex time at night. I think most people can get on board with that. And there's so many different parasite cleanses. I really like the Shen Blossom Mountain Detox tincture and the Aka Hinoki. It's like a mixture of different resins. But for a really affordable parasite cleanse, I think the walnut hulls, pumpkins, sprouted pumpkin seeds, and tequila are the way to go. I found it fascinating when Adam said that a carrot at nighttime protects the lungs the next day. So I'm thinking there must be an orange connection with the lungs. If oranges are good for the lungs in the morning and carrots are good for the lungs at night. I know the last couple of years, a lot of people are having a recurring cough and congestion and just lung issues. And so I think the orange juice in the morning and the raw carrot at night is a really good start to support lung health. So if you want to dive deeper into solar nutrition and Adam's work, you can go to sunsyncnutrition.com. I'll put the link below for that. And if you click on membership, for a lifetime one-time fee of $100, you get access to a lot of cool stuff on his website. Like my favorite is the food list, and that's where it has all the drink recipes that are really fun. But you can click basically morning, afternoon, and evening, and it'll change up all the foods and make it super easy to figure out, if you want to play around with this idea, what you can eat at those different times. And Adam's other website is solartiming.com. And under store, if you click Adam's ebooks, there's a big long list of all of the books that he's written thus far. And there's also another segment called Adam's mini ebooks, which are a little shorter. but he actually just came out with one about copper. It's called Copper, the Good, the Bad, and the Valid. I'm really excited to dive into that one. Thanks to Morley getting me obsessed about copper, Morley Robbins. And minerals are just fascinating to me. And the deep connection between vitamins and enzymes and minerals, there's so much to learn there. And I think it's really misunderstood and underappreciated how those interactions work. So go and support Adam's work. I think what he's doing is awesome. He's a humanitarian and just a walking encyclopedia. I feel like I could talk to him for weeks on end. And that's probably why our shows are always so long. But really fun stuff. And I love the way that his mind works. If you want to support my show, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. And I have all of my recommended products up there under shop. I want to give a shout out to Transcriptions, Just Blue. There is actually just an article posted a few days ago in the New York Post online how methylene blue is fish tank cleaner. Doctors slam influencers for ingesting fish tank cleaner to fight aging. I'm going to put the link below because it's really funny. And I actually got severely censored on social media for about the last 8 months. My account's been what's called shadow banned, where people can't search me and my features are limited and I don't grow subscribers as fast. And there's all these things that go with being shadow banned. But the crazy stuff is I didn't even say the C word much. I'm pretty sure that I got censored just because I talked about methylene blue. And I was really talking about it because I do think it's one of those incredible things for what we're dealing with today with the whole situation. It's just a really affordable and effective supplement. And what Transcriptions offers is more of a nootropic. So it's lower dose than what you would get in a liquid methylene blue product, but it still has an incredible brain effect. And I think it has an even better effect if you're aware of iron overload and the issue of copper deficiency that creates and how retinol plays into that. And if you understand the relationship between retinol, copper, ceruloplasmin, then you add in methylene blue, it will have a much better effect than if you're copper deficient and vitamin A deficient, then you add it in this copper polish called methylene blue. You won't get as much of a benefit as you could. So I really like that company. You know, if you're going to the beach, if you're going on a hike, it's really nice to pop one of those Just Blues and, you know, experiment with a quarter or a half or a whole one and find what dose works for you. But I always feel a little brain buzz from that. And Mitolife is my brand. You can find that at mitolife.co. And we have a few products sold out, but for the most part, things are in stock. Lately, I've really been hammering down on retinol, thanks to Mr. Morley Robbins. Just tons and tons of research. I'm bookmarking study after study, connecting dots of how retinol, vitamin A from foods protects from lipid peroxidation and how it's so important for immune health and T cells and all of these things. But it works together with hormone D. And then you have vitamin E and vitamin K, like K2. And so they're all important. And what I'm starting to realize from my research and the messages that I get sent by people with various different names of XYZ health condition is that everyone's deficient in everything. That's my understanding, but zinc and ascorbic acid and iron and all of the usual supplements, fish oil that people take, those are just making the situation worse. So it's really about finding out what supplements are harming you and what supplements you've taken that have harmed you. A lot of these are the liposomal supplements that are being pawned right now in the supplement field. And then adding in the right ones. And just adding in vitamin E and vitamin K2 can make such a huge difference. And then if you start to get the retinol coming in, then you're really rocking on all cylinders. So that's it. Thank you for listening and for sharing these shows with your friends, even through all of the censorship. There's a new show released every Friday, and I'll see you next week. Stay supercharged.